Tip today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning. Welcome along to Tip Today, 1800 938 007. That's our free phone number. It won't cost you if you'd like to make a call to us. And Leanne is producing as usual. Coming up on the show this morning, we're live from Nina, by the way. Coming up on the show, Tánaiste and Minister for Finance, Simon Harris, will be joining us this morning as he travels to Tipperary. We'll also be speaking live in studio with Deputy Alan Kelly. The International Olympic Committee has announced a ban on transgender women competing in female events. We'll be discussing the reaction to that decision. Francis O'Hanlon brings us this week's financial slot. Thomas Conway will be here with the global news. Councillor Richie Molloy will join us because he's saying the carers have been left behind. We'll hear why. So all of that and much, much more on the way. You can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. You can email tiptoday@tipfm.com. Let's have a look at the front pages of some of your newspapers today. Very sobering story on the front page of the Irish Daily Mail. They're telling us that there's a growing concern that the state may have to put COVID-style travel restrictions in place if the Gulf crisis continues for another month. Let's have a look at the Irish Examiner and the lead story on the Examiner today. Ireland's critical marine infrastructure needs to be prepared for multiple possible attacks, from sabotage to cyber, as the damage to the economy and society could be catastrophic. Also reading on the Examiner today, then a task force for Cork City to improve foreign direct investment and promote arts and culture on Leaside is to be approved by the government. The Irish Independent, the lead story on the Indo today, legal action even will be taken against the state by Limerick-based Gardaí, who were cleared in court after facing unproven accusations of perverting the course of justice, their solicitor has said. And finally, let's have a look at the Irish Times and the lead story on the Times today. A quarter of children on the waiting list for mental health services were waiting more than 9 months to be seen at the end of last year. The minister responsible for the area confirmed she sought an urgent plan from the HSE on how it would deal with the backlog. Also on the front page of the Times, the National Concert Hall is embroiled in a row after accepting, revoking and then reinstating a booking from former Fine Gael Minister for Justice Alan Shatter to host a private fundraising event for the Irish branch of an Israeli ambulance charity. And that's a look at what's making headlines on some of your newspapers today. If you would like to comment on any of that, once again, you could text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. Now, the International Olympic Committee has banned transgender women and DSD athletes from the female category of events at the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics and Future Games. Kirsty Coventry, the president of the IOC, said a landmark decision had been taken because it would not be fair for biological males to compete in the female category. The Countess Group released a statement welcoming the decision, and Sorkin Ní Loughlin, director and sports spokeswoman for the Countess, joins me now. Good morning to you, Sorka.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm very well indeed, and thank you so much for coming on with us today. Obviously, you're very happy about this decision, Sorka. Do you feel that you were denigrated in the past for calling for this very thing to happen?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we've been accused of bigotry and transphobia for asking for fairness and safety for women and girls in sport since the foundation of the organisation in 2021. And you know, a lot of our opponents would say that we're acting out of malice or some kind of misguided, hatred or anything like that. Whereas we see this as solely to do with biology, with fairness for women and girls, and with the fact that female athletes need a level playing field. They need to compete against other female athletes only in order to excel, and also in order to even participate in sport at grassroots. So we're absolutely delighted that the IOC have essentially made a U-turn on their previous policy and acted with such definitiveness on explaining how and why they will be now protecting the female category and excluding anyone who tests positive for the S or Y gene and hasn't had has had androgenization, so they have a male body. And we're really, really thrilled with this news. It's brilliant.
My reading of it is, though, that the decision is not retroactive.
Yes, this is very disappointing for athletes who lost out on medals in boxing in 2024 and in the athletics in 2016 because of the participation of males with DSD, so disorders of sexual development. And there were 3 athletes in particular in Rio who would have placed first, second and third in the 800 metres, but actually ended up 4th, 5th and 6th. And you can imagine the disappointment that they felt. And they were either completely silenced or absolutely denigrated for even expressing that kind of upset. In particular, one athlete who was very, very upset publicly was severely chastised for expressing her feelings about that. So, yeah, it's very unfortunate that those athletes won't get back what was taken from them. But at the same time, absolutely delighted that we won't be seeing men punching women in the face in the name of Olympic sport anytime in the near future. It's a brilliant victory for common sense and for the athlete voice.
From your own surveys, and indeed other surveys as well, this is going along with the majority of public opinion, is it not?
It absolutely is, yes. Our first ever national survey on attitudes to gender was conducted by Red C in 2021 and found the vast majority of people favoured a female-only category with the exclusion of all males from that category. Our own Sport Ireland found similar when they looked at this area in 2023, and the IOC reviewed as part of their review included athlete consultation. They actually interviewed over 1,100 athletes and they said it was overwhelmingly in favour of sex screening and a protected female category. So although there are very loud voices who are expressing dismay and disappointment at this, the vast majority of those working and participating in sport and the vast majority of ordinary people really welcome this and they understand why it's needed.
What about other Irish sporting bodies then following suit, do you think? I mean, is that going to happen, do you think? I'm thinking particularly, I suppose, of the LGFA, Sorcha.
Yeah, we seem to come back to that one a lot. They have been intransigent. The very interesting part of this is obviously this will trickle down to any sport that has an Olympic programme, because they will not be able to really allow any boys, even not underage, to progress through the kind of levels needed in order to be at the level to potentially qualify for Olympics. So you're talking, these athletes are identified usually at quite a young age, and our girls at that age need to compete on a level playing field in order to display their excellence. And there really is no way that you could allow a boy into that situation and then take that away from him as he gets older and say, oh, you're really good at running against the girls, but you're still not going to be able to go to the Olympics. So we hope that this will trickle down to every single Olympic sport that is represented in Ireland, and obviously that it prompts a review from the likes of the Ladies Gaelic Football Association, who said that they used international best practice to produce their extremely poor policy, which allows men and boys over 12 to enter ladies Gaelic football teams. So hopefully they will review their policy. It's overdue for review now at this point, and they will stand with their players rather than with the activists who prompted this policy in the first place.
One thing I'm not clear about is the actual test. What is the test, and how will eligibility be determined, Sorcha?
So the test is a screen for what's called the SRY gene, and the SRY gene lives on the Y chromosome, which is the male chromosome. So a female will have XX chromosomes and a male will have XY chromosomes. On the Y chromosome will be the SRY gene, and that is what prompts male development down the male pathway. So if you have an SRY gene, you are male. There's there are various disorders of that sexual development of those males, and most of them result in somebody who goes through male puberty. There's one called complete androgen insensitivity syndrome, CAIS, where they don't get that boost of testosterone. Their bodies never respond to that testosterone. And those athletes actually may be allowed to compete at Olympic level after they've been assessed. So what the SRY gene screen does is anyone who tests negative, immediately eligible. Anyone who tests positive, further investigation to see what that positive is coming from, whether it's this CAIS or one of the more common ones like Castrosomania had, which is ARD, where they're born appearing to be female on the outside, but then they actually have internal testes and they get that boost of testosterone. So they essentially grow up to be normal males with normal male bodies apart from these internal testes. So this will protect the female category to a huge extent. Now there are arguments around CAIS because those individuals don't experience female reproductive cycles or pregnancy or nursing or menopause or anything like that, but certainly their bodies do not respond to testosterone in the normal male way in the muscular development and the skeletal development. So it's very fair for female athletes while still allowing those CAIS athletes to compete.
And will this be the gold standard of test? Will this be used right across the board, do you think, then, if other organisations decide to fall in line with this?
Yes, well, there are numerous ways of screening for that. And so the IOC have said they consider that gene screening via saliva, cheek or blood sample is unintrusive. And so regardless of how you do the screen, the testing for the SRY gene is considered to be the most effective way of screening out any males from the female category, regardless of who they are, whether they are males who say they're women or whether they're males with a DSD that is undiscovered.
All right, Sorcha, really good to talk to you today, and thank you for making time for us. Thank you. Good morning to you. That's Sorcha Ní Lachlan there, who's Director and Sport Spokeswoman for the Countess. 1800 938 007. The text and WhatsApp is 083 311 3311. And Leanne is with me in studio. And you're busy already?
We're busy already, and I feel really sad. I really, really do.
Why?
I've spoke to so many people this morning, obviously, in light of the fact that Tánaiste is on shortly. But I feel really heavy, and my heart feels really heavy after speaking to people about it.
What? There's a lot of difficulty out there.
There's a lot of difficulty. It's very, very emotional. There's a lot of people who've got in touch, and it's just basic things they're really, really struggling with. Food, clothing, fuel. People now having to go to charity shops to try and give their children clothes because shops that would have originally been very cheap have gone up in price. People sharing how they're going into shops at certain times when they know that the best before date food will go on sale. So eating food that's almost out of date to try and cut down the cents on their shopping. Another huge one is sanitary products. It's just awful that people are trying to find alternatives because female products, they could be €6 or €7 a packet, and if you need them for the month, and people looking in places where are free to try and see if they'll give them to them.
Wow.
Toilet tissue. A lot of shops have had to keep their toilet tissue in their public toilets behind the counter, only leave 1 or 2 rolls out because people are robbing the toilet roll. It's this need for essentials, and just hearing so many people, a lot of pensioners getting in touch who are sitting in the cold with blankets.
And this is all based on the fact we said that Tánaiste is coming on with us, is it? Yeah.
It's people are calling out for help, and it's when you hear people and you hear them so upset. A man said he's sitting with blankets in the cold. He's trying to not use his electricity because he just can't afford the bill. He's even going as far as trying to boil things on top of a stove or a candle, just any way he can to try and cut down these expenses.
It's interesting, and over the weekend I was telling you off air, I mean, I've been hearing from former members of the GRA, for example, again, when they heard that Tánaiste was coming on, they had questions for him. I'm hearing a lot from the farming community as well, who seem to be struggling out there as well. So we'll put that to him. But I can see by you're upset by what you're hearing
I'm
this
so
morning.
upset to hear parents having to try, with communions coming up and confirmations, trying to budget, trying to find, not eating enough themselves to try and have an extra meal for their children. Shoes, obviously young children grow out of shoes so quickly, trying to pass things down through the children. It's the basic things that people don't even think about. And that's why even here in Nina, why the food banks are becoming so popular and so important. I know like St. Vincent de Paul and charities like that are inundated because people genuinely can't afford to live. And if you need to drive to work, you have to pay the fuel prices. And that idea of working from home has come in a lot, that comments were made, well, work from home where you can. But people can't do that. And it's get to work or don't have a job. And if you don't have a job, well, then you won't have any money at all.
One of our listeners saying, I hear the Tánaiste is coming on this morning. Fran, before he comes on, can you share this with listeners and keep this in mind? I'm saddened to see the state of Ireland. I often sit down and I cry thinking about it. Our young people are leaving. We can't afford basic rights like fuel, food and diesel. We're in a housing crisis, whether the government wants to admit it or not. Good, hard-working Irish people are faced with homelessness but cannot have modular homes without planning permission, for example, says one of our listeners to us today. So this is that's an example, I suppose, of what's coming into.
We're getting so much in on them modular housings, temporary homes, because we were hoping by now obviously there'd be an update. I think when we were speaking before about it was February, they were kind of expecting an update and some movement on it, but there still hasn't been yet. So a lot of people are, and there's so many stories of people putting up modular homes or caravans, mobile homes, and having to take them back down because you need the planning at the moment, and people really don't have the time or the money for that. It's either chance putting it up and have somewhere to sleep or sleep on the streets.
All right. What about social media and the like? What have we got up there? What have we got running at the moment?
So we're going to put up a post on this and see if in the morning you had the power to make a decision to change one thing you see people struggling with at the moment. What do you think it is? What do you think that one big problem we need to get right is? Because I know on a lot of our other posts, everything seems to come back to the negatives at the moment. If we talk about pet peeves or if we talk about favourite movies, whatever we talk about, it always comes back to, well, things aren't good here at the moment. Like the happiest country report we did last week.
Yeah.
You know, we thought it'd be a little bit of lighthearted fun at first, but then we genuinely saw so many people were unhappy. So I'm going to put a post up there and see what is actually going on in people's lives right now. And hopefully we can all be a little bit of a community and see.
Well, hopefully so, indeed. So no happy story for me this morning?
No happy story this morning. And I found it really, really difficult because you hear the voices and you see the struggles and they're calling for help and they're wondering why no one is listening to them, and they're putting up social media posts and it's like, please, can you help me? And I even noticed with ourselves, we've been inundated. We always help people out wherever we can, but lately there's been a huge spike in the amount of people reaching out for help, which is brilliant because we're always here to help people, but it's so sad.
Isn't it just indeed? All right, Leanne, thank you for that. If you want to speak to Leanne, it's 1800 938 007. Just to remind you again, you can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311, and you can email tiptoday@tipfm.com. Now, following my chat there with Sorcha Ní Lachlan from the Countess, a lot of our listeners happy about that decision by the International Olympic Committee to ban transgender women and DSD athletes from the female category of events at the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics and the future games. All right, we're going to take a break. Back with more.
Tip FM's Tip Today. With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
And you're very welcome back to Tip Today, 1800 938 007. I'm joined now by the Tánaiste and Minister for Finance, Simon Harris. Good morning to you, Tánaiste.
Good morning, Fran. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome and good to talk to you today. You're heading to Nina this morning, and for good reason as well.
I am indeed. I'm delighted to be heading to Nina this morning for the formal opening of the Nina Community Nursing Home, something that I know has been long awaited, much anticipated. I remember being back in government with Alan Kelly and Kathleen Lynch all those years ago when the battle to make sure this facility came about really started in earnest. And today we'll formally mark the opening of a facility that's now at full occupancy, 50 beds, including 5 respite beds, palliative care beds as well, and real state-of-the-art facility. So I haven't seen it yet, but I'm told it's one of the very finest nursing home facilities in the country. Looking forward to that. And then heading on up the road to Drummond Road, where there's 307 A-rated homes now under construction on what was a vacant site for 15 years. It's going to see a purpose-built creche as well, and an agency in my department called Home Building Finance Ireland is helping provide the funding for that development.
So you're going to have a busy day in Nina. When we put it out on our promo over the weekend, Tánaiste, that you were coming on, we had a lot of people interact with us, and even this morning to our producer Leanne, a lot of phone calls this morning, and particularly around the fuel reductions. I mean, the 15 cent on petrol, 20 cent on the diesel, 3 cent on marked gas oil, criticised as being insufficient, and even before tensions involving Iran, many households already struggling. But what we're hearing now is people are really, really finding it very difficult out there. Is that being reflected to you?
Very much so. And I mean, people, as you rightly say, Fran, are really feeling the pinch in a very real and practical way. And as you rightly point out, energy costs in Ireland weren't cheap. They weren't low before Iran. And the situation in Iran has made the situation even worse. What I would say to your listeners this morning, though, is this. We have acted in the last week. It is one of the largest interventions of any government in the European Union per head of population. It's also not the final word on the matter. What I try to do, and I think it's important to do when you're in my role, is I've tried to take an immediate intervention that is helping somewhat now, but also to say, hang on a second, I'm not locking any measures in here for 6 months because we can't predict where the war will be in 6 days, let alone 6 months. And that gives us the ability to come back and further adapt or amend or add or change measures in the weeks ahead. Because I've got to be really, really honest with your listeners. If this situation goes on into the winter period, the scale of challenge we'll be facing will be much more significant and indeed different. So I've got to make sure I keep some of our powder dry so that we have an ability as a country to respond in the time ahead.
We've been hearing this morning from people who are literally sitting in the cold, and they have that very real choice between eating and heating. Heating oil prices remaining through the roof. What can be done about that, though? Because what's been done so far is just not near enough.
So look, the first thing I'd say is that anybody at risk of fuel poverty today should be qualifying for the fuel allowance. The fuel allowance was due to expire this week, and we've taken the decision to extend it for a further 4 weeks, to extend it really into the summer period, which I think is the right thing to do. This week, if you had been receiving the fuel allowance as a lump sum payment, this week you'll get that 4 weeks as a lump sum too, if that makes sense. If not, you'll continue to receive it as a weekly payment for the next 4 weeks. That was a measure we took that will benefit nearly 500,000 households. So statistically, those most in need, likely to be pensioners, carers, people with a disability, low-income working families, will receive that assistance. I have to also be truthful, we're limited in what we can do from an excise point of view on home heating oil because it doesn't have, in the traditional sense of the word, excise. So we were able to reduce the NORA levy, but that is only 2 cents a litre. So if this crisis continues, I am clear we'll have to come back and consider what more can be done in the weeks and months ahead. But right now, I don't want anybody to be sitting at home choosing between heating and eating, because there are measures in place to help those at risk of fuel poverty, called the fuel allowance, and I'd really encourage people to avail of that. We've expanded it to 50,000 more families in the last month as well, to all families in receipt of the working family payment for the first time ever.
The other thing that strikes people is, I mean, what is it, 250 million where this intervention is concerned? And what concerns people is that there's no problem, it seems, spending billions supporting people fleeing war in Ukraine or asylum accommodation and the likes, alongside significant overseas aid as well. It seems that we can find billions when we need to do so, but, you know, this seems rather modest by comparison.
Yeah, I'd have to push back a little bit on that respectfully, because this country is in a good economic position, but we have to make sure that we have the resources for the time ahead. Imagine if I was back on your program. I'd be very happy to come back on any time, but imagine if I was back on your program in the months ahead, and imagine the war was still going on, and imagine inflation had risen significantly, and imagine the global economy slows down significantly, and imagine we face an entire new set of economic challenges. I want to make sure that we have that ability to respond. The UK, our nearest neighbour, put a package in place to help their citizens in recent weeks. If you compare like for like in terms of population, it would be the equivalent of us having announced about a €6 million package. So we have announced like €250 million is a significant intervention. It has made sure that petrol prices and diesel prices are lower than they would have otherwise been. But we are in a very, very precarious global economic situation. We've been criticised for many, many, many years. Why are you running a budget surplus? Why are you having a rainy day fund? Well, this is the reason why. Imagine what this country would be like if we had a deficit now and didn't have an ability to respond. So I don't want anyone out there to think that this is the last word on the matter. It's not. But how we approach this, step by step, stage by stage, is the only intelligent way to get through this.
Sean O'Farrell, the former Ceann Comhairle, has warned that failing to address agri-diesel costs, for example, could cause irreparable damage to relations with farmers. So what about are you underestimating the frustration in rural Ireland, do you think, Tánaiste?
Not at all, and indeed I represent a constituency that's both urban and rural, and I was speaking to the president of the IFA only on Saturday evening, and I'm due to meet the IFA and farm contractors with the Minister for Agriculture later this week. We can only reduce excise that exists. So green diesel is treated differently in terms of excise to petrol and diesel. So we reduce it by 3 cents, but then it will also benefit from the 2 cent NORA levy reduction. So it's a real impact of 5 cents of a reduction. But I need to be clear, we're going to look at sector by sector what needs to be done in the time ahead. Of course, the most important thing would be for this war to end. That would be the greatest economic intervention. If it doesn't end, we will work to get through this because, as a country, we've gotten through every crisis so far. We have been hit by crisis after crisis, whether it was COVID, whether it was Ukraine, whether it was the inflationary crisis, whether it was a financial crisis. We are in a good position to respond and get through this. And I'd argue we're actually in a stronger economic position than most countries. But frustrating as it is, I have to do this in a step-by-step way because anything knee-jerk that I do now could indeed actually limit our ability to take further action in the time ahead. And that's the balance that we've got to get right, and I'm constantly reviewing that balance.
Top of the list, needless to say, for the government has to be housing delivery, and Michael Fitzmaurice coming out to say that, the cost of diesel now is going to add greatly to the difficulties of building. Do you go along with that?
What I go along with is that if we get to a situation where there's a prolonged war, the economic impacts becomes much, much deeper globally, and that Ireland isn't immune from that. And all of that sets a much more challenging set of circumstances for our country. But I do think, and I have good time for Michael, but I do think we do have to just take this step by step, as I keep saying. And I say that for a reason, because, nobody can predict where this war will go. I saw the latest comments of the President of the United States only a few moments ago saying that, he thinks they could reach an agreement soon. You hear contradictory information from the Iranians. So this situation is very, very volatile. But I am conscious when you mention housing. I'm going to visit Nina today. I'm not sure there's many towns in Ireland that per head of population are seeing the level of house building that you're seeing in Nina, where we'll see these 307 A-rated homes under construction in Driven Road. But when you look at that, plus the site beside the Nina Community Nursing Home, you must have around 1,000 homes under construction in Nina now, which is really, really a very positive development of housing supply. And we are making progress on housing. And we've been very clear in our programme for government. Come what may, we're going to continue to invest in public services and continue to invest in housing because it's absolutely key for so many people right across the country.
A lot of our listeners over the last couple of weeks wondering about carbon tax and wondering, is it possible that you could reconsider the government's position on this? Because this, again, would help greatly.
It's one of those things that people would think would help greatly, and then it would cause huge, huge problems. So every single cent of the carbon tax and then some is now spent on moving our country away from carbon and from fuel poverty. So retrofitting, if there's somebody listening to this programme who's drawn down a retrofitting grant, and thousands of people have, that's being funded through the carbon tax. If somebody's getting an assistance with purchasing an electric vehicle, that's being funded through the carbon tax. If somebody's drawing down the fuel allowance in County Tipperary, that's being funded through the carbon tax. And what I would say to people is, we need to get away from carbon. And anything that we could do, like as long as we're reliant in this country and in the European Union on dirty fossil fuels from far-flung parts of the world, we remain at the mercy of decisions taken by other people far away from Ireland. So if anything, we actually have to accelerate the transition. And the conversations I want to be having now with communities, with government colleagues, with European leaders, is what can we do now to speed up the move to renewables, to offshore winds, to making sure we have energy independence. So the carbon tax, no one likes paying tax, I know that. I've yet to meet a person who likes paying tax, but this is a tax that is ring-fenced to help the transition, and the trajectory of it has been locked in since 2020. It would be the wrong decision. I'm sure it would be temporarily very popular, but my job is not to be temporarily very popular. My job is to make the right decisions for the future of this country.
So much coming into us on this. One of our listeners saying, I'm a small-time agricultural contractor. We may not be able to get credit this year for diesel and other inputs. Would you please ask the Tánaiste how he's going to help out our sector?
Yeah, no, and thank you very much to that listener. So the IFA and Farm Contractors Ireland were on to me about it, but I'll be meeting with them this week to see how we can assist. We've brought in, as you know, a diesel rebate scheme for hauliers, for bus contractors. Some people qualify. Some people are saying, hang on a second, I think I should qualify, but I don't. And this is the fluidity of the situation. So very eager to engage with farm contractors and looking forward to having that meeting this week.
All right, somebody else is saying, will you ask the Tánaiste about those that don't qualify for fuel allowance, the working poor, those of us who are out there paying our taxes continually fall between the cracks, and the Tánaiste needs to live in the real world, drop the USC charge, bring back the government support payments on electricity bills. People are working hard each day and coming home to cold houses, and it's the same people that are benefiting all of the time. And I guess that's making reference to, and you often reference them yourself, the squeezed middle. They're more squeezed than ever.
Yeah, I think and I want to address that directly, we just have to be a little bit careful with any implication as to who receives the fuel allowance. The bulk of people receiving the fuel allowance are pensioners who worked their backside off for the good of this country, and I don't begrudge them the fuel allowance. So this idea that people who get the fuel allowance are not people who work or contribute positively to society is unfair. Pensioners, carers, people with a disability, and now only in the last month we've extended it to the 50,000 households in Ireland who do work and are on the lowest income. They receive what's called the working family payment. In other words, they do work, they do get up early in the morning, they put their shoulder to the wheel, and they contribute positively. But to that listener, let me say this also. I intend to make sure work pays. I will deliver 2 budgets as Minister for Finance before returning as Taoiseach. And in each of those budgets, it's my intention to make sure you keep more of your take-home pay. Because I do accept that there are people who get up at the crack of dawn and are finding it hard to make ends meet. And they actually don't want government to do a hell of a lot for them other than to get out of their way and make sure their money works harder for them. So things like the rate at which you pay the higher rate of tax, and making sure people can keep more of their own money are all things that we will be looking at in the budget. And I don't rule out, to that person who says, you'll need to help me with my energy in the time ahead, I do not rule out the government needing to take further action. I do not rule that out. I can't rule that out. But I have to take this in a staged, managed way, because it's your money I'm managing. It's not my money. It's public money. It's taxpayers' money. And I've got to make sure that the interventions we make now are sustainable, but also that we have reserves in the kitty, that if we end up facing a dark and difficult winter, that government can help people. I mean, the only thing, and I'm not being in any way flippant at all now, but thank God we're coming into the summer period now in terms of brighter evenings, and I hope to God at some point better weather. This crisis will feel very different in the winter, and that may require a very different set of interventions then. So I certainly don't rule out, quite the opposite, having to intervene further in the time ahead.
A couple of quick things to put to you, and I know that you're on a time difficulty there, but you're developing this new investment scheme, and you're arguing that this will benefit the squeezed middle. But just given that this group has limited savings, is it not more likely to benefit wealthier individuals who already have significant investments in the markets?
No, I really don't think it is, because I mean the wealthy the wealthy and the uber wealthy know how to look after themselves. I don't need to, nor do I wish to help them. And there's lots of evidence that people who have significant wealth in Ireland are able to invest in stocks and shares. But there'll be lots of people listening to this programme today, public work, public servants, people running small businesses, farmers, people working in the private sector. And despite all the challenges we face, and I accept we face challenges, they're trying to set aside a few bob. And that's not just me saying it. The figures show Irish people are the best savers in the European Union. That is a statement of fact. But at the moment, if you're putting your money into a low deposit account, going down and putting a fiver into the credit union account for the kids, or trying to save for the rainy day, or save for a house deposit, you're making no money on it at all. And actually, inflation is often stripping out the money that you're making. So I want to introduce what they've done in a number of countries, like Sweden, like the UK, like Canada, a savings and investment fund, where it's specifically targeted at the squeezed middle and allows you set aside some of your money and get a greater return on it. And tomorrow we'll host the first ever Savings and Investment Forum, where we'll start to design this. I intend to legislate for it in the budget and have these new accounts open in 2027. But this is a genuine effort to help people. Even Irish people under huge pressure, still try to put away a few bob. We've got to make it work for them, and it's not fair that the tax system screws them over, quite frankly, and I'm absolutely determined to fix that.
A former leader of the GRA in Tipperary made contact with me over the weekend when he knew you were coming on, Tánaiste, and he was making the point the Garda Síochána facing serious decline. He said recruitment falling far behind, resignations are soaring, nearly every eligible member is choosing to retire. The organisation is in complete disarray. What do you say to that, former Garda?
Well, I'd always be very slow to dismiss the view of anybody who served in uniform, so I take seriously what he says. I would also say alongside that, though, that we are now seeing Temple Moore in your own county of Tipperary busier than ever before. In fact, so much so that we're having to look at how we can acquire additional space or train Gardaí in different ways to create more space. I'm conscious that the AGSI conference is on today as well, where there'll be an opportunity for direct engagement with the Minister for Justice in Westport. I do think, though, one of the things we have to do is make sure we better support our Gardaí. I think, when I was Minister for Justice, I extended the sentencing that anybody who assaults a guard would receive. We started the rollout of body cams in recent times as well. I want to see them rolled out nationwide, because I do think being a guard is a dangerous job in modern society. So better supporting our Gardaí with better protection, with tasers where appropriate, with body cams is a big part. Garda pay has risen in recent years, but we will have another public sector round of pay talks in the coming weeks that will be important as well. Being a guard is a tough job, but it is a job worth doing. And we are now seeing Garda recruitment numbers grow again, thankfully, after a significant period where it was going in the wrong direction.
Can I finally ask you about the River Shannon project, that notion of taking water from the Partine Basin, Uisce Éireann's notion to bring it all the way to Dublin in the pipeline, given the significant opposition, including indeed from Fine Gael, Councillor Phil Bugler, who I know you'll be with today. Do you support this project?
I do, is the truth, but I want to get it right. So I look forward to seeing Phil and Peggy and Willie and others, along with Michael Murphy and Garrett Ahern shortly, and talking to them about this and a number of other issues. I really, really think, and I said this directly to Irish Water, and let me say it directly to your listeners too, there's a chance for Irish Water to do this right, or there's a way of doing it wrong, and they need to make sure they do it right. It is essential that we get security of water supply for all of our country, and it is essential that the Shannon plays its part in relation to that. But we also need to realise that this could be a project that benefits all of the country, or certainly significant parts of the country, not just Dublin. And I think there are opportunities in terms of spurts, there are opportunities in terms of investment and water supply schemes in Tipperary and in the Midwest, that this can be win-win. So I'd really, really encourage Irish Water to engage, and crucially not just to engage, but to listen. Councillors, local authorities, their can-do and their attitude. I don't want to see a situation where one arm of the state is round with another arm of the state. It's too important. We have to deliver critical infrastructure. Water is vital. So I do support this project, but I do think there's a way of getting it right. And I think with a little bit of ingenuity here, we can show benefit for the Midwest as well as putting this crucial project in place that will secure supply
and with
in Dublin. So there's a way to go.
With all of this opposition, Tánaiste, including from your own people, would you not urge Uisce Éireann to have a look at the other options again?
I'd urge Uisce Éireann to see how we can devise a scheme here that works in the round. I mean, I got to be honest, and I look forward to talking to Phil and Peggy, Willie, Michael and Garrett about this shortly. There's a balance here. We've got to move quickly. And we really do need to move quickly. Most of your listeners, would be telling me anytime I meet them that it takes far too long to do anything in this country. And this is critical infrastructure. And we need to make sure that we move quickly and that we don't delay. But I do think from listening to my own councillors and my TD, Michael Murphy in Tipperary, I do think there's a way of getting this scheme right. And I do think there are sensible ideas that Irish Water could incorporate and reassurances that they could give that could bring communities with them. And that's where I'd like to see this progress.
And very finally, your Tánaiste, your leader Fine Gael, your Minister for Finance, and given the current geopolitical instability, the impact on global Irish economy, are you the right person to be serving as Minister for Finance at this time, do you think?
Well, I took the decision to become Minister for Finance because I thought once Pascal Donoghue left that putting somebody in who had been Taoiseach and will be Taoiseach would apply a degree of political heft that was important. I wanted to become Minister for Finance so I could help drive the domestic agenda. I really loved being Minister for Foreign Affairs, but I felt it was important to be back in Merrion Street working on the issues that matter to people. There's never before been a Minister for Finance who has served as Taoiseach and who will go on to serve as Taoiseach during the lifetime of this government. And I think bringing that seniority to the role helps get things done, helps move things. And I think now more than ever that's important at this time of instability. Our country is in good economic shape, but I am concerned about making sure work pays. I am concerned about the squeezed middle feeling that life is still too tough for them. And I intend during the two budgets that I will deliver to show people how we're going to make real progress on those issues.
Tánaiste, thank you for your time this morning. Good morning,
Thank you so much, Brian.
That's the Tánaiste Simon Harris there, 1800 938 007.
Tipp FM's Tip Today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On, main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County, and now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
And you're very welcome back to Tip Today, 1800 938 007. And Deputy Alan Kelly is with me in studio. Good morning to you, Alan.
Good morning, Fran.
Good to see you today. It's a special day for you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, as you know, the Tánaiste said there, he's coming down. We're officially opening the nursing home, which I fought for 15 years once HICWA said that St. Conlon's, which I was hugely passionate about, was closing. And then the government I was part of ensured that the funding for this was put on the capital plan and for the new nursing home. And then we had to fight to get a site, which I was able to help the HSE with. And then obviously it got built. And then we all had know about the issues relating to it not being opened and taken over by UHL. Mm-hmm. And then myself, Louise Morgan Walsh, Fiona Bonfield, Shamie Morris and many others, led by a great group working out of St. Conlon's, Anna Tracy and everybody else. We took to the streets, thousands of us, and eventually we got it opened. And today is the official opening. But I'm so happy for the residents, the staff. Councillor Louise Morgan Walsh is actually working there now. She's gone from the hospital into the nursing home, and it's probably the most modern, state-of-the-art facility for residents in Ireland. And, you know, I've always said if we can't look after our elderly, Fran, you know, what can we do?
Sure. Is it fully staffed now? Because there were issues around recruitment.
Yeah, it's nearly there, and it's nearly full as well. So, yeah, I'd be confident enough that that issue will be dealt with. There is some recruitment still to be done, but it's incredible. It's an absolutely incredible facility. I mean, it's like a hotel. It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
And as you say, it's what people deserve, which is that thing.
So,
Again, something I'm curious about, did it have to be reconfigured after being a step-down facility?
it did, but not much. I mean, it was built as a nursing home, so it is. There wasn't much that had to be done. There had to be some small alterations, but not much.
Okay. Were you surprised at what Simon? I think you may have been listening to Simon Harris outside. Were you surprised at what he said about the Shannon Basin, about Partine and the pipeline?
He wasn't totally 100%. I would have thought it wasn't unequivocal. He didn't show great confidence in the project going forward. So, look, that's gone into a planning decision now, so we'll have to wait for that decision to come out. But for me, I think time has moved on so much since this was mooted. And my biggest issue here is why expand Dublin? Are we not all into spatial planning now? And like the people in Dublin, in fairness to them, they need to breathe as well. Young people can't buy houses up there. It would not be more appropriate to allow for spatial planning down the Midwest and in other areas around the country rather than trying to expand Dublin? It can't be all Dublin. And that's my biggest issue with this.
So are you completely against this project? Just for clarity.
Yeah, I have made a submission with Louise and Fiona on this. I believe that from a spatial planning point of view, this is not the right thing to do. I also think technologies have moved on. I also think that there's issue as regards can this be developed cost effectively. We're talking 4 or 5 billion. I don't know if that's even going to do it.
Some estimating that could be up to 10
and also the timelines, Frank. I mean, this is going to go through a lot of legal issues, I would presume. And on top of that, then there's environmental concerns. I'm definitely the closest TD to the Shannon. Born half a field away from it. I'm very passionate about it. I used to be manager in Bord Fáilte, hugely protective of environment and tourism. So, we'll have to see where this goes, but I think there's a long way to go on it.
But you said an interesting thing lately. You even have concerns about Uiscéireann's ability to pursue this project. Really.
Yeah, I have the project here in Nina in relation to wastewater. That got profiled, and all of a sudden now it's gone back a couple of years. And when I see projects like that, which are, medium-sized, very important project here, considering, and I have to acknowledge, in fairness, I didn't expect Simon Harris to say that Nina has one of the largest amount of houses being built in pro rata per any town in Ireland, which is true. I'm involved in most of it, and we'll be going to Quantum Homes later today, who we brought to Nina, down in Drummond Road. But when they can't get a project like that right, then that leads me to have concern. I believe in to have a water utility. I believe in all of that, but I would have concern about the quality of the management there.
Can I ask you about the Gardaí as well? Because when Tom Finnan, former GRA rep for Tipperary, when he knew Simon Harris was coming on this morning, he gave me a very lengthy WhatsApp. But basically what he's saying is the Garda Síochána, serious decline, recruitment falling far behind, resignation soaring. Nearly every eligible member is choosing to retire. The organisation is in complete disarray. Do you see anything in that you would doubt?
Not one. I'd say more. I had a motion in the Dáil last week, Fran. And a lot of people have stopped me in the street and said I was exercising.
You were very annoyed.
I was exercising my lungs last week in the Dáil. I hadn't done it like that for many, many years. I took the Justice portfolio as opposition spokesperson, and my main reason for doing so was support on Garda Síochána, to support what's good there, but also to deal with issues that aren't. I've had hundreds of Gardaí onto me in the last month. Hundreds and hundreds. This is non-exaggeration. I know a lot of the lads here in Tipperary. I've stopped in the street talking to guards. I've stopped in Dublin and in other parts of Ireland. And my concerns are real, and I agree totally with what the GRA are saying. And I think symbolically, I raised all these issues in the Dáil last week. I think symbolically what happened in Limerick is an absolute total disgrace. And we see now this morning reports again in the papers that
the state is going to be sued
again. And I said all this in the Dáil. And there should be some form of inquiry, some form of analysis of this, because we can't allow this. I mean, the morale of the Gardaí in the Midwest is destroyed by this. The number of policing charges as regards road offences went down dramatically. Also, you have to wonder why Limerick was picked on. A number of these Gardaí, by the way, are based in Tipperary. And it really is symbolic that, a force would treat its members like that, and it wouldn't encourage anybody to join if they're going to do that. So I think that all needs to be looked into. I'm not saying it should be a huge, big, massive tribunal or anything like that. In fact, I don't believe it should be that. To counter what the Taoiseach said last week, I don't believe that at all. But I do believe somebody should be appointed, whether it's a retired judge, whether it's a senior counsel, to scope this out and look at this issue as to how we ended up in this scenario where 11 guards were treated like this and their families, and they went through hell. I've met with them, Fran. They have cried in front of me. I know they were destroyed. And, it's not like any other occupation, really. If you are a guard and you're suspended or charged, that changes everything forever.
Do you think there should be a proper look into Drew Harris's term?
100%. I think there's a range of other issues. I brought it up in the Dáil in relation to many other issues. I think that his tenure really needs to be looked into, because I have concerns across a whole range of issues. Many I've raised in the Dáil, some I haven't. I believe that many of these issues will come back and will haunt this government and will haunt the previous government. I said that in the Dáil in a far more forceful way. But I believe the issues in relation to a whole range of things, in relation to arms, in relation to fingerprints, in relation to holsters, in relation to a range of other things, will come back to haunt this government. It's only a matter of time.
And Jim O'Callaghan here, you were cross with him as well as everybody else.
Jim is quite a personable person, a good communicator, very bright individual, all of that. But
he left the chamber, though.
He left the chamber, but I mean, he also needs to have achievements, and I don't know what those achievements are yet. He needs to.
It seems to be around immigration largely, isn't it?
Yeah, that seems to be his focus, and I have issues with some of that, and I don't have issues with other parts of it. But really, when it comes to Garda Síochána, which is what we're talking about now, he really needs to show that he can make decisions for the good of the members, and it starts with what happened here in Limerick, and it starts with the other issues GRA have referenced and what I have referenced. And I do know it, and I have a deep concern on this, and I know what the Tánaiste said, that they're looking at other areas for training Gardaí. So there is a review going on again, a second review in relation to moving some, and remember, some of the training out of Templemore. I've no doubt Templemore will maintain as the primary training facility. But I have a deep concern about how government, in their programme for government, which was done by the independents, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, which said they were looking at taking training out of Templemore, and now they're still talking about and still at it. So I have a deep concern about that for the people of Templemore and surrounds.
Do you not think the training they're making reference to, though, would be campus training and the universities and certain modules that they would do through?
Well, it's very simple.
Level?
If the training's going on in Templemore at the moment, anything that's taken out of there is a negative thing for Templemore. I mean, there's a massive farm down the road in Clonmore where driving schools and everything else can be moved, and it's still in
Tipp FM's Tip Today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On, main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County, and now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today
with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Thanks, Pat. Welcome back to the second hour of Tip Today. We are live from Nina today. Okay, lots coming into us from my conversations with the Tánaiste and indeed with Alan Kelly. Let me bring you some of those. When you ask Mr. Harris, well, it's a bit too late to do that, but ask the Tánaiste, why is Nina now and Nina over the last 15 years getting all of the investment and all the other towns around the county haven't had anything close to it? This is one of our listeners to us today. Let me bring you some more of that. Yeah, one of the messages I read out for the Tánaiste that came in from one of our listeners, just a response to that, and it is the cheek of him. As usual, goes on the attack and twists words. My partner is a pensioner and still has to work. Because of that, we don't qualify. And we're still paying a mortgage and will be for the next few years. We don't ever benefit from any package, and there's thousands of us. that are propping up this country and getting nothing. I've never criticised any sector. I stated, is it? It's the same people all the time that get help, and the likes of us don't. And that would refer to the conversation we had with the Tánaiste around the squeezed middle and the like. Anyway, still lots more coming in on that. But right now, let's link up with our studio in Clonmel and our financial expert, Francis O'Hanlon from FOH Finance. Good morning to you, Francis.
Hi, Fran.
And good to talk to you today, even though I don't see you in person, you see. We've got lots of questions. Will we deal with those first of all, Francis, if that's okay? I'm buying the house we're living in. We have a personal loan. Family have given us some cash towards the cost. How do we manage the cash part is the question.
Yeah, so I'm not really sure what this person is asking, but they're entitled to receive cash. I suppose that's the first thing to say. Yeah. Their family are entitled to give cash. Another thing to add there. But you need to make sure, obviously, that it's within revenue guidelines, be it for small gift exemption or inheritance gift thresholds for the lifetime of such gifts. So you will, I suppose the most obvious thing is you will need to probably lodge that money and pay these funds by EFT or bank draft to your solicitor for the completion of the purchase. And possibly you may have to make a revenue declaration in respect of the funds that you're receiving, again, depending on the thresholds. Look, I suppose if in doubt, speak to a tax advisor, but again, just make sure that it's compliant and that you don't run yourself into trouble down the road by not I suppose declaring funds that maybe you should have declared, or noting them somewhere, as they say. But again, if in doubt, speak to your solicitor. Probably give you a good idea as well, either to your solicitor or to a tax advisor.
I love how familiar this question is. It goes, hey, Francis, I called into my local credit union in Ena last December and I asked what dividend or interest rates they're offering. I was advised that no dividends or interest will be paid. At the moment, they are proposing to sell mortgages and give loans to farmers. How fair is this? John from Nina, who's kind of cross.
Okay, so look, I can't speak specifically about Nina Credit Union, but let's just speak in general terms. Interest, dividends, be they credit unions, banks, they all differ. And I suppose the big thing is savings slowly dwindle in value. We've mentioned this so many times, Fran, over the years. You have to earn money on your money. And the big thing that's shouting at me here about John is that John is in tune. John is aware, and that he asked what interest he was getting or what dividend was payable. And that's really, really important that you are aware. From there, you can make a decision, be it to your benefit or your detriment. But if you make a decision, say, oh, no, I don't want any risk, I prefer to stay in the credit union or the bank, knowing that I'm getting so little interest that it's not even keeping up with inflation, or I'm not getting any interest at all, that's a decision, but it's an informed decision. Okay, but I would say it's possibly time to think about using some of that money, John, to maybe try and get some better rate. And I think, again, it's hard at the moment with the markets are a little bit volatile, so that makes people a bit nervous. But again, market fluctuations come and go, and we'll talk about that no doubt 100 times in the next couple of months again. But I would say for any of the credit unions or banks, and there's inclinations of this already, that they're already a little bit nervous about this upcoming government savings scheme. That they're talking about at length now, and it seems to be at a fairly progressed stage where they're looking to implement it sooner rather than later, where it may be that if you save under the system that they're proposing, that you will be tax exempt, or else it'll be a uniform very low rate tax. So I think all the banks and credit unions will have to sit up and take notice when that comes into play, or they might find that they have very little, not little left, but a lot of their reserves could be gone into other incentives.
Yeah, I was speaking to Simon Harris about that new investment scheme, and there's some fears about that it's just going to be a haven for people with a lot of money to transfer their interest into that scheme and therefore not pay tax.
Look, it's like anything, Fran. I suppose there's always people that have more, that get more benefit, I suppose, on that basis. But, let's talk about the people that have less and they get some benefit, because at the moment the tax applies to everyone. So it might be that you're getting more interest, but you're still paying the tax on it. And it's the same, like if somebody has less money on deposit, they're still paying the same rate of dirt tax on their savings. So it doesn't matter. Anything that helps anybody to get some more money on their savings or incentivise them and they don't end up paying tax for it, let's not worry about, I suppose, the bigger ticket holders. And in my experience, and I'm advising a long, long time, and I deal with a lot of people, the majority of people are average and have average savings. And, we're not looking at the, there are, of course, people that are extremely wealthy and have a lot of reserves, but they're not the rule, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think anything that enhances people's experience of investing and where they don't end up paying tax, even if they're only saving €1,000, how bad? Because at the moment everyone does.
Fair comment indeed. Another question for you. We've got a small bit behind on the ESB bill and still paying January's bill, and a couple of other bills, the bins, etc. Never felt as tight for money. Both working. We don't go out. Things are just tight. We have a mortgage, but it's always paid. We have no credit card. Any advice for us going forward? I've spoken to providers. No one is putting us under pressure, but I feel under pressure. What should I do? You know what?
Isn't this so now? This question,
absolutely.
This came in weeks ago after our last session, Fran. Yeah. When I was reading this, I thought, oh my God, I totally, I understand what this person is saying. It's really not a nice feeling to feel you're treading water all of the time. And that's what I get in buckets from this comment from this person, and they must be feeling even more pressure at the moment if that's the case. But again, what I want to say here is awareness. This person is aware that they're under pressure and they're acknowledging it. And I know that sounds maybe ridiculous to some people, but I think that's half the battle. Oh my God, I'm a bit swamped here.
Yeah.
I need help. I need to ask the question, even to us, or I need to ask the question of somebody, what do I do here? So again, to underpin what they've done already, I would say all they can do is speak to their providers, possibly look at different pricing within their various contracts, be they utility bills or whatever it be. But again, just be careful about fixing in at the moment. I'm not a utility bills expert. I'm with you. I have to look at my own bills, but I would say to people, just be careful at the rates they're fixing in at the moment, because there's great temptation to panic and jump into contracts. Just be careful. You need to speak to somebody, I suppose, within even the utility bill company, and ask them about the historic rates. They don't have a crystal ball. It's like us looking at markets. They don't know what's going to happen on utility bills and rates, but they'll give you an inclination. So again, that's something you could look at. I would also ask, have they received a pay rise recently? Now, any employers are going to be screaming, I am an employer, but any employers are going to be saying, listen, we've enough going on between auto enrollment and now fuel prices, and this is going up and that's going up. But to help this person, sometimes they don't get regular pay rises, or they haven't received one in a while, and maybe that's a discussion they need to have with an employer, even if they're told no, they've asked. The other matter would be bigger ticket items like their mortgage. Is there any wriggle room there? So again, will the government have to intervene? Yes, possibly. I don't know. Again, you probably know more from that recent interview than I, but I think we're all going to have to watch this space. People are under pressure. But can I just say to this person, it's great that you've set it out. Just keep your chin up. Yeah. You'll get through it.
Do you know something I'm wondering as well? If you get behind on your ESB bill, does that affect your credit rating?
No. I would say no.
Okay.
No. Right. look, again, it's a strange one. I'm not encouraging people to stop paying their electric or whatever because it haunts them. This is a bill that has to be paid. But no, I have never seen an ESB bill affect a credit rating.
Okay,
in the central credit register, because I suppose, again, it's not something that you've signed up for credit, is maybe my interpretation of it. But no, I haven't seen it, Fran. But I'm open to be contradicted.
Another question for you then, Francis. I'm feeling extremely overwhelmed. Somebody else is feeling overwhelmed.
I know, yeah.
This morning.
Just a theme, isn't it?
43 years old, regretfully did not start a pension. Is it too late? Well, 43 is hardly old.
No, I would say, firstly, please don't let this swamp you.
Yeah.
Just think of pensions as long-term savings, okay? And I would say, look, it's never too late to start a pension. I have people that come into me in their maybe early 60s that have never did pension, and I'm saying, hold on a minute, you can get some tax back, and I'm looking at pensions for them even in their last couple of years before retirement. So no, I hate to tell you, you've years to work yet. I'm saying this to this 43-year-old. So the other question I would say, are you self-employed? Is what I'm thinking here, because I ask that as if you're PAYE and you're earning more than 20k, you've been AE'd or auto-enrolled, or you should be a member of a group pension scheme now based on recent changes. If you are earning less than 20k, then I question if a pension is the right thing for you, as I expect you're not paying very much tax and you might be better off with a long-term savings plan. As we've always said, there has to be an incentive to do pension, and I put that, the word pension underlined, because once you go into pension, there's rules about getting back out. So if you don't have tax incentive, what's the point? Okay? So again, don't panic, please.
All right. Finally, it's a rather complex one, Francis. We have 4 adult children who will eventually be the beneficiaries of our estate when we die. Our solicitor mentioned that we will have to pay a tax bill. I know they're entitled to a certain amount each, tax-free, but can we avoid the tax on the remaining balance? We have worked long and hard and paid a lot of tax over the years, all at high rate. They are working and also paying tax, and it just seems unfair that what we pass on will be taxed again.
Yeah, and again, this kind of ties into the first question that we had in a roundabout way, because it's about thresholds. So I said, firstly, again, it's hard to advise when we don't have specifics here, especially when I don't know how old you are, how much income you have or you need, your health, your children's circumstances, how old they are, how responsible or money savvy are they? Are they single? Are they married? Do you have grandchildren? So they're all the things I'd be looking at if I was trying to advise somebody. And by the way, again, tying into politicians, this is currently under review. From what we understand, the Taoiseach has recently said that they're looking at these thresholds, I think, at the moment. So I'd say watch this space for change. Again, I might add, be that to your benefit or detriment. So in general terms, I'm just going to assume here that this is a married couple, your children and your assets are in Ireland, and that your 4 children are single with no children. Threshold at the moment for that child to inherit or be gifted in their lifetime is 400,000, and anything in excess of that will be liable for 33%. Okay, so if the total estate is equal to 4 times, so that'd be 1.6 million, then your children should be tax-free. Okay, they should inherit your estate tax-free. Yes. Again, depending on the thresholds at the time of your death. If you have funds in excess of the 400,000 per child, and you have grandchildren, you can leave 40,000 per grandchild. Okay, as well as what you leave your children. And if you want to take it a step further, you can also leave money to your children's spouses if they have any. Actually, that should be 20,000, okay? So the above structure may well see your estate distributed with no CAT liability. But if it doesn't, if this person, again, speaking of levels of wealth, I don't know what level of wealth this this individual is talking about. But if it's a thing that this still doesn't deal with their estate, they can look at pre-death gifts by gifting each of their children 3,000 each. So this couple can give 6,000 to each of their children. Okay, under the small gift exemption.
This is per annum, is it, Francis? Yeah.
And they can also gift their grandchildren 6,000, and even their spouse, the spouse of, if that applies, of their child as well. So there's a lot of money could be given out potentially under the small gift exemption. Again, be careful what you're giving away. Sometimes people can be overzealous on the small gift, but because they're worried about fair deal schemes and all of the above. Give away your money when you're kind of finished with it, or when there are ways of dealing with capital acquisitions tax, and that's sometimes people's fear. If we're looking about a more substantial gift pre-death, we could look at using something like a Section 73 savings plan, which I won't bore you with today, but we've spoken about before. And indeed, post-death, if your estate is still going to be so substantial that the beneficiaries will have a substantial inheritance tax, even utilising the thresholds to the max, then there's a thing called a Section 72 life policy, again, that we've mentioned before, where you can take out life cover specifically written as a Section 72 to deal with the capital acquisitions tax that the recipients will face. So sometimes people say to me, yeah, but I have 500,000 life cover. First question I would have is why? Do you have 500,000 life cover? And if you think that that's going to deal with the estate down the line, actually all it does is increase the value of the estate if it's not written specifically as a Section 72 policy. But again, this is a long-winded answer, because this is even further, there's far deeper discussions to get into in a situation like this. But that's just to give a flavour. Again, I would just be mindful that if you don't gift properly, it can technically reduce thresholds of the person that's eventually going to inherit from you as well. So it's just take the time to do it properly and to seek advice is what I would say.
Absolutely. And speaking of advice, if people want to talk to you or your team, Francis?
Yeah, no problem. They can contact us through our website, which is www.foh.ie, or email me foh@foh.ie, or ring the office in Clonmel 052 6129487.
All right, great to talk to you.
Thanks
as usual,
a million,
Francis.
Fran.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good morning to you. That's Francis O'Hanlon there of FOH Finance in Clonmel. We'll take a break. Back with more in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, welcome back. A listener says, life is hard, Fran. Money is short for some like myself. It's hard, but every week I give something to ESB and bins. And it does help, but some people don't want to pay for anything and they let it all build up. I have a husband with cancer and life can be hard and difficult to pay something. But to keep us afloat, we have to live. And I think life is there to enjoy. And the bill is building up, says one of our listeners to us today on 083 311 3311. Time for global news. Glad to be joined as usual by Thomas Conway from the Nina Guardian. Good morning to you, Thomas.
Good morning, Fran.
The Houthis are now getting involved in everything, and their attack on Israel. I thought they were sort of decapitated, really, you know?
To an extent, I think they are, but much like Hamas and maybe Hezbollah in Lebanon, it's very hard to completely disintegrate these organisations. They emerged in the early 2000s as a movement opposed to the Yemeni government. They're from a branch of Shia Islam, Zaidi Islam, and they would be very much at odds with the Sunni government in Yemen at the time. And so there was a religious element to their emergence. They really sprung to prominence in 2014, and that was the start of the Yemeni civil war. They took the capital of Yemen, Sana'a, and from there kind of launched their offensive. And over the past few years, obviously, they have been threatening shipping in the Red Sea, in what is known as the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, which is kind of similar to the Strait of Hormuz. There isn't as much oil flowing through it, but it is still significant. And I think that is the major leverage they have.
And they've been backed by the Iranians.
They've been backed by, they're a pivotal Iranian proxy. They have been for years, and so they kind of... they share affiliation with Iran. Iran is mainly Shia Islam. The Houthis are Shia Islam, so the religious relationship is there.
Why did it take them about, 3 or 4 weeks to get involved in this?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. They had been practicing kind of a policy of restraint. Now, as I said, they had been bombing ships or attacking ships in the Red Sea because of the war in Gaza up to last summer. The Trump administration then struck a ceasefire with them. I think they were intent on preserving that ceasefire, but now once they saw Iran striking the energy infrastructure across the Gulf, once they witnessed kind of the retaliation from America, Israel and Gulf countries, they kind of got sucked into the war. Now, there are economic factors at play here as well. The part of Yemen which they govern, which is kind of the northern section, is extremely poor. In fact, the whole of Yemen is extremely poor. It's been devastated by civil war for the past couple of years. People are living on meager sums of money. So there is an economic element to them getting involved as well. They get handouts from Saudi Arabia. It's a little bit contradictory. They get certain money from Saudi Arabia, even though Saudi Arabia is or was fighting against them in the civil war. So it's a complex situation. The Yemeni civil war is very, very complex. But make no mistake, the Houthis are on one side of it. They're on the Iranian side, and their major leverage is the Red Sea and the shipping that's flowing through the Red Sea.
And they could disrupt shipping in that area?
And that would significantly escalate global oil prices, because obviously the Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed at the moment. If they start thwarting ships in that Bab al-Mandeb Strait in the Red Sea, well, that will skyrocket the oil price up further, and that will have further negative consequences for the global economy. So that is their major weapon here. But it's unclear thus far what exactly their strategy is. They fired a number of missiles over the weekend at Israel. Is that the extent of their involvement? Will they just continue to hurtle missiles in Israel's direction, or will they actually go for the shipping? That's the real question here.
Right, but does Yemen then become another front?
I think it does. It becomes another battlefront in what is already... It is a regional war at this stage. I think that is very clear, even though the Gulf states haven't chosen to strike back offensively. They're housing US forces, and the US are striking Iran from there. But I think this would open another front. You're certainly right. So we now have, obviously, Iran itself. Lebanon, what's happening in Lebanon is horrific, with those 3 journalists killed most recently over the weekend. And then Yemen, and Yemen can ill afford this. Much like Lebanon, it seems to be a broken country economically, and I think the prospects of the situation there worsening will really threaten the country further.
Let us look to the States then, and to one of the many characters, Marco Rubio, in this case, described here as the chameleon in the war room, but very much in the war room, though.
Yeah, very much pulling the strings, it seems, from the reports I've been reading.
Who is he? What is he?
Yeah, he's 56 years old now. Marco Rubio was kind of, in fairness, a prodigious young man. He was first elected to the Florida House of Representatives in his 30s, would rise to become Speaker of that House, and it was subsequently elected to the U.S. Senate, which is a huge elevation. He is the son of 2 Cuban immigrants, a cashier and another kind of blue-collar worker, really. And so his Cuban descent, or his ancestry in Cuba, is pivotal in terms of shaping his policy towards the island, and in terms of shaping, the US, a potential US incursion on the island of Cuba. But he rose up the ranks. He was US Senator, sparred with Donald Trump. He ran the 2016.
Was nasty to him?
Yeah, was quite
Trump
nasty.
Was nasty back. Yeah,
called him Little Marco. Trump likes his nicknames. But has proven to a certain extent to be, as you mentioned there, a chameleon. He has kind of changed shape in response to the circumstances surrounding him. Now, he was a very well-regarded senator, served for 14 years, and when he was nominated as Secretary of State last year, he was passed unanimously by both Republicans and Democrats in the Senate. So that will tell you how well-regarded he was. But since then, he's kind of shifted position, because the Marco Rubio in the Senate was a hawk on Russia, very much in support of Ukraine, very much pro-Israel, it's worth noting as well. But he has taken a number of positions that, while they're not quite at odds with those positions, he's pivoted. I mean, he has been a little bit more sympathetic to Russia, even though I sense that he kind of has Ukraine's back to a certain extent.
Yes.
He's one of the few people within the Trump administration whom Europeans feel they can deal with. He's more statesmanlike, we'll say, than Mr. Trump, but more statesmanlike than the likes of Pete Hegseth and other figures.
So we would have seen then, I suppose, with the Munich Security Conference, where the year before Vance had been there and had been rather scathing.
And then Rubio goes this year, and I like the quote from Donald Trump. He says Rubio did it with a velvet glove, which is to say that he launched a kind of a softly spoken speech, but he made all the same points, except he did it in a softer tone.
Yes.
A more concealed tone.
And the delivery was really remarkable, wasn't it? I mean, it was a perfect piece of oratory.
Perfect piece of, and it's worth watching back. It was a perfect piece of oratory, as you describe it there. There is no doubt about it. He is very capable.
Is this with his eye on the Republican nomination, really, at the end of the day?
I think it probably is, even though he says if J.D. Vance runs in 2028 that he will support him. But, there is still an open question as to who will succeed Trump, and Mr. Trump has been quiet on this. Probably because, if he were to pick a successor, it might erode his own power. He doesn't want to do that. But Rubio, he's 56. He has 2032. He has beyond that. He's probably playing a long-term game here. I think he has all the credentials to be president, if I'm honest. He has widespread support in Washington. He would be a more conventional politician. As I mentioned there, he's very statesmanlike, and he's very, very capable.
And there's a possibility, of course, of Mr. Trump, even though you wouldn't know the way this is going to turn out, but could do something about Cuba. And how would Rubio feel about that?
Yeah, I think he would be very much in favour of it. As we mentioned there, he's probably to an extent dictating the policy. It's hard to know who's dictating the policy in the White House, in fairness, but he is influencing the policy on Iran, influenced the policy on Venezuela, and you can bet big on the US doing something at least to Cuba, whether it is toppling the regime, whether it's coming to some sort of agreement with the regime. But Marco Rubio will be strongly pushing that. That is one of his core motives for getting into politics. His parents, Cuban immigrants, very much, they fled Cuba during the reign of Fulgencio Batista, the former general before Castro's came to power. And I think Marco Rubio would love to be the man who returned Cuba to capitalism and to democracy. I think he would go down very well amongst Cuban exiles in the United States were he to achieve that.
Right, but it would have to be profound change, I guess, to suit him, not a Venezuela type.
No, I think it would have to be whole systemic change. I think he would actually have to change Cuba's communist system into a quasi-capitalist system and introduce some element of democracy in the country.
However, Thomas, if it all goes pear-shaped for Mr. Trump in the Middle East, and there's a good chance that it might do so, will he go down with the ship?
Yeah, I think it would reflect very poorly on him, on his policy choices, because as I said there, if he is the one influencing, if he is the one kind of pulling the levers behind the strings, it really will not reflect well on him, and it will damage his prospects for the 2028 presidential race and perhaps beyond. I mean, I know over the weekend that J.D. Vance has kind of been thrown into the situation in the Middle East, which is very interesting. The Iranians have expressed a willingness to deal with Vance, perhaps
because he was against
the war initially, and because his philosophy would be against foreign intervention in the war. So it's interesting that he is his role is becoming prominent in this, because they are the two leading figures when it comes to the 2028 Republican nomination. I can't see anyone. As of now, I can't see anyone emerging from the woodwork to take them on. It's kind of Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance. But Vance is polling far better amongst Republicans. I was surprised to learn over the weekend he had a massive lead at the start of the year. Now, Rubio has whittled that down in recent months, but he is still behind. So Vance is the more popular among all tribes of the party. It is interesting,
Is that because from an ideology point of view, he is the man where the ideology is?
I think that is the case, yeah. I think he reflects the core grassroots, particularly of the MAGA movement, but also of elements of the party, and he's from that electoral heartland in the Midwest. He probably would have the capability to take those swing states, the likes of Pennsylvania, the likes of Georgia, etc. So I think Vance is, he's in pole position at the moment, but make no mistake, this, the outcome of the Iran war, what emerges over the next couple of weeks, will be decisive.
All right, will you stay with me for a moment, Thomas, because I must take a break.
Sure.
We'll be right back.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
And you're very welcome back. And Thomas Conway is still with me, and we're talking about global news to Denmark. Now, the Danish Prime Minister is surviving, but...
She survived, but only just.
Yeah.
Mette Frederiksen, she just about, her party, the Social Democrats, just about emerged as the largest party from last week's election. Very interesting electoral landscape in Denmark. There are a number of different blocks. So you have the Red Bloc, led by the Social Democrats. They're kind of the centre-left, leftist faction. The Blue Bloc, they're the centre-right faction. And for the past couple of years, Mette Frederiksen has led a kind of a unified cross-party government. This is her third term. She sprung to power in 2019, won an election again in 2022, and as I say, has just emerged as the largest party here.
And on the political spectrum...
She's centre-left, it's very curious. The Social Democrats are centre-left, more centrist than anything else. But she has taken a number of very interesting policy stances, most particularly on immigration. So people might be familiar with this because it's made headlines all over Europe. They have taken a tough stance, the Danish Social Democrats. They've taken a tough stance on immigration, really tough now, as in far-right, hard-right kind of a stance. And... to a large extent, even though it probably isn't reflected in the results here, but it has worked to a certain degree in the sense that they have brought what was historically a very high rate of immigration into Denmark, an unsustainable rate of immigration. They have brought that down to a very manageable level and succeeded in stemming the flow. Particularly, it was probably spurred by the migration crisis in 2015 as a response to that. And people were making their way to Denmark, and she took a tougher stance. It has also, she has fended off the rise of the far right. The Danish People's Party, who are the kind of hard right party in this instance, they did okay, but nothing sensational. They're nowhere near, unless a right-wing government forms, it looks like they're not going to get anywhere near power. So she would have more typical social democratic policies when it comes to welfare and the economy, welfare benefits and stuff like that. But on migration, it's a very interesting strategy that she has adopted. And to a large extent, it has worked. Now, the thing is, she hasn't been immune to controversy. People might remember, if they reverse back a couple of years, the mink cull scandal in 2020. It was when the Danish government decided to cull a load of mink, the wild animal, over fears that they harboured COVID-19. Now, that was subsequently proven illegal, and there was a commission of inquiry, I think, into it, and she did not emerge well from it, and the whole government did not emerge well from it. But they've managed to, I suppose, rehabilitate their reputation to a certain extent.
She stood up so well to Trump, did that?
That was a factor. And
on Greenland, I guess.
Over Greenland, because Greenland is obviously a semi-autonomous Danish territory. And she kind of took a leaf out of the books of other centre-left politicians. You look at Albanese in Australia and Carney in Canada. So she stood up to Trump over Greenland. And it led to a surge in her poll numbers, and that was the reason that she called this snap election. I don't think the election campaign went as well as she might have anticipated. She called it a respectable result, which was a fairly sober account of it. I think the Social Democrats will have wanted to do far better. I mean, they're now in a position to form a government, but really the party and the man who is the power broker here is a guy called Lars Løkke Rasmussen.
He's an unusual character.
A very unusual, a very kind of idiosyncratic character. He's the foreign minister in the outgoing government, but he smokes a pipe. He's a leader of a party called the Moderates, which are bang on a centrist party. They were formed a couple of years ago. They splintered from, I think, the centre-right party. So he's leader of the Moderates, and they don't have much seats. But they're in a position to form either a centre-left government with the Social Democrats, or else they could tack to the right and with the centre-right party form kind of a right-wing government. I get the sense that they will go in Fredriksson's direction and aim for a bit of continuity. He will want to, I suppose, hold on to his position as foreign minister because he's been a very influential foreign minister. He was front and centre in the whole Denmark row and all that entailed as well. But an intriguing character. And the most powerful man in Denmark right now, because he has the power to form the next coalition. But certainly, a curious guy, very likeable guy, very charismatic.
And the Danish People's Party, they're threatening to make life as difficult as possible for the Prime Minister.
Yeah, perhaps frustrated that the result wasn't as good as it might have been. But I suppose they want to be part of a right-wing government. And that potential avenue is there. The centre-right party is called Venstre. If they link up with the Danish People Party and get the moderates on board, they have the bones of, I think, above 90 seats. And 90 seats is the threshold. I think there's about 184 seats in the Danish Parliament. It's a country of 5.9 million people, so it's not dissimilar from Ireland. But obviously it has kind of the Scandinavian social democratic model there.
Yes.
And it is different in that regard. So it's a very interesting electoral landscape there. My prediction is that Mette Frederiksen will emerge as Prime Minister, that this guy, Lars Løkke Rasmussen, will eventually decide to go in with her, and they'll probably form kind of a centrist, centre-left government that will lead over the next few years. But it's not going to be easy, and it might take a bit of time.
Interesting. In other news then, Nepal's former Prime Minister arrested?
Yeah, this guy, KP Sharma Oli, is arrested for his crackdown on youth-led protests that toppled the government back in September. People might remember this. There was what has been dubbed as the Generation Z uprising last September, in which I think up to 90 people were killed. But Nepal had an election a couple of weeks ago, and I mentioned the 35-year-old former rapper Balendra Shah. He was subsequently sworn in as Prime Minister. He won the election. They're now pursuing criminal charges against the former Prime Minister, so he's probably going to be in the dock at some time soon. So this is kind of a complete reversal of fortunes for him, but a sign that Nepal is going in a different direction.
Huge protests right across the cities in the States.
Yeah,
as well.
This is the No Kings protest. It's the third wave of marches against Donald Trump. And organisers described it as the largest.
His immigration policies.
And his immigration policy specifically. I on a general level, it's probably against Trump, but it is really the immigration policies and the work of ICE and everything. But a couple of the organisers described it as the largest day of protests in US history. Now that's saying something, because the US has witnessed many large-scale protests. There was about 9 million people across 3,000 events. And meanwhile, Donald Trump's approval rating, is on the floor. But increasingly, it seems to me that he isn't all that perturbed by it. He obviously has the midterms to look forward to, and he has to remain aware of them. But you just don't know what's happening in Trump world. He can defy opinion polls, and of course he can come back from low approval ratings as he has proven in the past. But certainly these protests, an outpouring of opposition to the current president.
Interesting. If he got out of the Middle East relatively cleanly, would that see a surge in support again? If he could claim a victory, how, I don't know, but if he could claim a victory.
Yeah, I think if he he's now saying that he has achieved regime change, and
yeah, how can you figure that out? Because
technically the regime has changed in that there's a different ruler, there are different rulers, but they're arguably more hard-line than the previous crowd. So I don't know how he can really claim that as a victory. But there's talks now that the US is going to go in and seize Carg Island, which is the little islet off Iran where 90% of its crude oil flows through. If they can broker some sort of agreement that's favourable to America and Israel, and if they can paint it as a win that the US people will accept, well then,
But that would involve boots on the ground.
It would.
Okay. And just very finally, because we're out of time, but Vladimir Putin is celebrating.
Yeah, the surging price of oil is the reason, and the easing of American sanctions. But amidst all that, Ukraine carrying out drone strikes, and that conflict still trundling on.
All right, Thomas, pleasure as always. Thanks very
much.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Thomas Quinn from the Nina Guardian with our global news slot. News and information's on the way.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Thanks, Pat. Welcome along to the final hour of Tip Today. Now, new research published by the Employment and Recruitment Federation and supported by Icon Accounting has highlighted how the skills shortage in Ireland is starting to delay further growth for organisations. Well, Siobhan Kinsella is the president of the Employment and Recruitment Federation and joins me now. Good morning to you, Siobhan.
Good morning, Fran. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome indeed. First of all, will you just tell me about your own organisation? I think it's a voluntary organisation, is it?
It is. It's a voluntary organisation to represent the recruitment industry in Ireland, and it has a very strong code of conduct in terms of how we treat our candidates, how we treat our employers, and it encourages the industry to operate to best practice standards. And also, we would be the group that would be in charge of the apprenticeship for recruitment in Ireland, as well as a voluntary body too.
You're saying, Siobhan, that the real challenge is not lack of jobs at this point, but a shortage of the right skills.
Absolutely, and I suppose the skills that are holding us back can be in technology, they can be in healthcare, they can be in transport and logistics. And one of the things I think that's at issue is not everybody knows how they can upskill. So if you're in business, if you contact, Tipperary SkillNet out of Tipperary Chamber, they can subsidise the cost of upskilling your employees. If you contact Tipperary Education and Training Board, even if you're in employment, they can provide upskilling to those in employment for a negligible cost through Skills to Advance for employers. And in the event that you have people in your life who are unemployed, they can also go to the Education Training Board or to Springboard or to apprenticeship.ie to find opportunities to upskill so that we have the skills necessary to maintain this level of employment in our economy.
Is the government doing enough in supporting the workforce, the development and closing that skills gap, do you think, Siobhan?
I think we suffer from, there's never been more money in skills and education, but the problem is awareness. Those inside the system might understand how to navigate it. But if you said to me that you had a young person who was looking for a role and they didn't know anything about the Education and Training Board. They didn't know that they'd be paid a training allowance in addition to being able to study free of charge. If you look at springboard courses, you can go directly into university and have that funded by government, or you can go into apprenticeship and you can do your traditional apprenticeships, but you can also, become fully employed and earn as you learn in recruitment, in financial services, insurance. The problem at this point, I don't think is the money. I think it's the awareness, and it's really, really important that people, and particularly us as parents or us as employers, don't just look at the university route and look at how many different routes are available for the people in our lives that have, paid jobs attached to them or training allowances attached to them, as well as the education. It's not just university college courses that are suitable for everybody. And I think that's particularly worrying when you look at the youth unemployment figures from those 15 to 24. I mean, when we were in the height of the financial crisis, unemployment in Ireland realised a rate of 12%. And for that to be the case for our young people, when so many of them are in Australia, I really do think the awareness for people to understand what is out there and that there are opportunities, because the longer somebody's unemployed, the harder it is for them to get back into the workforce. And I'd hate to see that happen.
What about the emerging technologies, and particularly, I suppose, AI and the part that will play in all of this, Siobhan?
It's the central bank came out with some staggering news last week about the amount of jobs they think will be displaced by AI, and I can't say that I would agree with them. I don't believe I'm going to lose my job to AI. I believe I might lose my job to somebody who is using AI.
Yes.
So, but I mean, I'm in the workforce quite a while, and dial-up internet was a feature when I started in the workforce, and now we all have Wi-Fi. If you look at all of the things that we naturally develop through AI, is going to be similar to that, but something really positive is going to come out of AI. The skills that humans have, like intellectual curiosity, empathy, decision making, critical analysis, AI can't replicate those things. In addition to that, I don't think we've placed enough importance as a society on transport and logistics, on healthcare, on craft skills. Those things kind of became, less attractive over time, and they weren't paid as well as they should have been. Well, AI can absolutely not replicate any of those things. Where it is going to be problematic is an entry level, what would traditionally in recruitment terms be called the milk run, and that is where the large companies recruit directly out of college courses for junior positions in the big four, in accountancy and finance and that kind of thing. Those people are going to have to develop a different set of skills, some of which are using AI, some of which where you go into the human critical analysis of things. But in terms of labour and trade type activities, they're absolutely safe from any impact on AI, but there will be some evolution and some job displacement as a result of AI for those not using AI.
And Siobhan, what about us balancing the need for immediate hiring with a longer term goal of developing the kind of skilled workforce that you're talking about there? That is a balance to consider, isn't it?
It is, and the reason that I made reference to something like a SkillNet is SkillNets are funded from employers' PRSI. So employers are paying for it anyway. And a SkillNet is set up with the needs of employers in mind. So you can go to a SkillNet as an employer and you say, listen, I have a gap here. My specific company needs skills in AI specifically to do X, Y, and Z. Can you go and procure that course for me? And how much can you fund it by? So it's not that you have to wait for something to be advertised where you say, okay, I'll do that. You can actually go to your local SkillNet and say, I need this, can you help me do it immediately? Where you're into more longer term issues is if you're looking at a course that has to be validated on the National Framework of Qualifications and it has to come out through the Education and Training Board, or it has to come out via a college, via the Springboard courses, or it has to come out via an apprenticeship, the lead time on validation of those kind of qualifications is too long. It is too long. It does take time, and you're into more of a strategic piece there. But I will say, if you look at, say, springboard.ie, and there's about 7,000 different courses there for places for people to upskill. If you look at apprenticeship I looked at 108 vacancies currently listed where apprenticeship, where employers are going to invest in somebody over a period of 3 to 4 years, where they earn a wage and get qualification at the same time. And then for, as I say, the Education and Training Board, they offer services to business in addition to full-time training places for those that are unemployed and want to reskill in a different area. But yeah, there's always going to be a mismatch between the length of time it takes for formal qualification to come onto availability versus shorter kind of what you call skills-based training, if you know what I mean, for specific gaps.
And I see that working from home, remote working, is back in the headlines again. How does that play into our conversation, or does it?
You know, working from home is great for me. I'm 50, you know, and I can deal with people, and I have great flexibility, and isn't it fantastic? But the problem with work from home, if you're 22, is I can't teach you anything. So there is a balance to be had if you want to progress in your career. If the older part of the workforce are saying, no, I love this flexibility and I'm working from home all the time, where is that informal training that's happening? Can I grab a word with you? I have this problem. Or I'm not going to send you an email because that's too big of a thing. But all of that informal learning that we all benefited from in the workplace, if there isn't a balance between work from home and work in the office, we're actually doing a disservice to those that are trying to build their careers, for those of us that have already built them. I do think it's interesting at the moment that some of the disaster planning in the context of the war in Iran is, you know, we make people work from home. And making people work from home shouldn't happen unless it's absolutely vital because of the cost to the generation coming behind us.
And just finally, before we wrap up, Siobhan, just a message to policymakers or business leaders to help them to address these skills issues. What would you say finally to them?
I think the speed of validation, the systems, the education system is made up of, you know, different bodies like QQI, apprenticeships, SOLAS, each of the 16 education training boards. I think speed for validation for new courses is of vital importance. The big worry for me is the rise in youth unemployment. I worked in the last recession reskilling and getting jobs for the long-term unemployed on a payment for results basis. Now, we were really successful, but the part that you need to deal with is it took us 2 weeks working intensively with people to get them to look in the eye once they'd been long-term unemployed before we taught them anything. So for policymakers, the speed for validation for new courses is one point, but to urgently address the opportunities for our young people so that they don't become long-term unemployed would be very, very important from my perspective. And we lobby government on these issues as well, and we've got great relationships, thanks be to God, with the state agencies like SOLAS, Department of Education, and the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment. So I do think for all business sectors, if you are part of a chamber, if you're part of an industry body, please get your lobbying in early this year, because Ireland has the presidency of the European Union this year. Pre-budget submissions have to go in earlier. Make your voice heard. Skills, the strength of our economy and our ability to provide good quality, dignified work for people is vitally important. So make sure that your industry organisation or your membership organisation gets the proposal into government well in advance of normal timelines to make sure that this is front and centre of our needs in advance of the next budget.
Great to talk to you, Siobhan. Thanks for making time for us today. Thank you. Good morning to you. That's Siobhan Kinsella there, who's President of the Employment and Recruitment Federation. Let me take a break. We're back with more. What is it now? It's 16 past 11.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, I'm glad to be joined by Family Cares Ireland Local Support Manager, Councillor Richie Molloy. Good morning to you, Richie.
Good morning, dear friend, and your listeners.
And thanks for coming on with us this morning. The government's emergency energy package, you are disappointed?
No, absolutely, Fran. I mean, I think there's another example of how the governments have left down family carers once again, because, I mean, there's no doubt that everybody is feeling the pinch with all the increases there in diesel and petrol prices, but it's the home heating that's really affecting family carers, say here in Tipperary. Anyone in a rural area is relying on heating oil, and they've done nothing for that. Like, I mean, a 2 cent per litre reduction isn't going to do very much when heating oil has actually went double in price. I think there's a real kind of lost opportunity for the government that could have shown, if they really do value family carers, you could have taken the cohort that actually received the carers allowance and did something, the way we've been campaigning there for a number of months for a once-off payment there. And that was even before all the Iran war started off. We were looking for that. And now, it's really necessary because, we're continually getting calls in saying the huge pressure that carers are on, especially the carers will say that are only on the half-rate carers allowance. They still have the same costs. And, carers are kind of, even, you remember you would have had Maggie Butler on there some time ago, and she was explaining the costs of electricity. If you have somebody at home, maybe on machines and that, the costs are enormous. And I mean, all those things have jumped through the roof. Actually, I know you had the Tánaiste on this morning. Did he happen to mention that about?
Well, he did. I mean, and I put it to him that, that the intervention seemingly, is inadequate to say the least. But he pointed to the extension of the fuel allowance, for example. I mean, I presume that's helpful to some degree.
It is, and we'd have to welcome the extension of the fuel allowance. Yeah. Is going to extend now until the end of May. But to be honest, Fran, a lot of carers, for one reason or another, don't qualify for the fuel allowance, even though they're on the carers allowance. There's a very strict criteria to get the fuel allowance. So that's not really of great help to a lot of family carers around the country. And that's what we're really campaigning. We're kind of saying again that carers and ourselves will have to put pressure on, I suppose, members of the government parties to bring this up at the parliamentary parties to see can it be brought in, because listening to the programme there last night, the other week in politics, there seemed to be a small door left open by the minister, I think it was Alan Dillon, was on there, kind of saying we're not in that space yet. But I think we are really, and there seems to be no let up on this war. It doesn't look like it's
in fairness, Simon Harris said that it all would be under review depending what was happening, but over the course of the morning and indeed the weekend, we've been getting messages from people who said that, they're living hand to mouth at the moment, and these aren't carers, ordinary people.
It's like for everybody, Fanny, sure. I mean, it's shocking really, the price of diesel. I mean, and like, has been pointed out, even with the cut that they made there last week, it still hasn't brought back the petrol and diesel very much. I mean, it's in most places now, it's just 208, I think, at best, per litre for diesel. And I mean, with all the chopping and changing, am I correct in saying it was 197 there before all this started off? So it's a substantial jump anyway. And you would see, and we'll say, if this war keeps going now, they're talking about ground troops going in and all the rest of it, you can only imagine it's going to get worse. So I think the government will really have to look again, that they're on recess now for the Easter break, but when they come back in 2 weeks' time, I can't see it having been improved. It's just worse, I think, it will get, certainly from a family carer's point of view.
That's the big fear. And just for clarity for listeners who are not caring for somebody, I mean, it is very difficult for carers to reduce energy consumption, Richie.
It's nearly impossible because, yourself, anyone that's looking after elderly people in particular, they need round-the-clock heating on all the time nearly. And they've no way around that. Like, it's like even any of us, if you're sitting at home during the day and you're not going out and you're not moving around, you're going to feel the cold. And this particular winter has been fairly, miserable as regards the rain and all the rest, and pretty cold still in the last couple of weeks. So it's hard to explain it. And then we'll say from a carer's point of view, if you have to bring people off to appointments, and a lot of the appointments are in Dublin, that say carers with special needs children are continually going to, you have your toll fee is going up in most cases, but the cost of driving to these appointments is enormous. That kind of brings you on, when this children's hospital finally opens, the kind of lunacy of where it's actually situated, right in the heart of Dublin City. It's like the biggest, like a lot of, we'll say you have people on free travel and so on, but I find once you're outside the main cities, the free travel isn't really of much use to you. It's only of use really for in Dublin City maybe, or Cork City, where you have a lot of public transport easily available. But most carers that I'm meeting down here in Tipperary are in rural areas, and that's where they're caught. There is no, you can't, we'll say, the natural gas that might be in the town. You're really relying on kerosene and that for your heat, and that really has doubled in price, like for 1,000 litres of kerosene.
For sure. And do you accept what he's saying on that, is that there's little they can do? Their hands are tied because of European directives on that. Do you?
Well, I think what he's saying, I can understand, it is a kind of a world crisis we're in, but at the same time, Brian, you take the costs of nursing homes. What happens really in these kind of cases is that the family carer just can't keep going, and they end up putting people into long-term care maybe before it's necessary. And then that's enormous costs altogether to the state. I mean, most nursing homes are charging between 1,200 to 1,500 euros a week, huge money. And it's all has to remember that a carer is only getting, if they're lucky enough to get the allowance, it's 280 euros a week. So it's pretty tight. Your money is pretty tight there. And with all these increases, even in the shops, I suppose we can all see, the costs of, different groceries that are rising because of the transport cost. Everything has a knock-on effect, I suppose, at the end of the day. But I feel the government could have done something there for the cohort of family carers that I suppose they make so much lip service about over the years, but that would have been an example of where they could have looked after them, and maybe still can in the next couple of weeks.
All right, Richie, Leanne was telling me you want to mention a fundraiser that's happening, do you?
That's right, Fran. I suppose on a bit of a lighter note, from the 1st of April, we're doing this 7,000 steps a day challenge. And we'll say people that might like to support Family Carers Ireland, if they literally go onto our website at familycarersireland.com, they'll see the details. It's basically you kind of sign up to do 7,000 steps a day, and then you'll receive a kind of a nice red type T-shirt in the post from us. And it's something that can be done in your own time. We're always very conscious. It's hard to get a time out maybe to do a specific challenge on a specific day, but this can be done at your own pace. I'm going to give it a go myself, Fran, and try and lose a few kilos over the next couple of weeks. So it's kicking off on the 1st of April, not a Fool's Day now, that might be misunderstood, but you can register up to the 1st of April to take part in the challenge. And I'd encourage people that might be listening this morning to give it a go. We could all do, I suppose, with a bit more exercise as the evenings are getting longer.
All right, well, we wish you the best of luck with that. Good to talk to you, Richie. Thank you. Good morning to you. It's Councillor Richie Molloy there speaking to us. 1800 938 007. In from Councillor Shamie Morris, he's saying, Fran, Simon Harris's response to you on the Eastern and Midlands water supply project showed an incredible lack of understanding or ignorance. Uisce Éireann has a 15,000-page planning permission into Comisiún Pleanála, so it's either going to get planning permission or not. The time for Uisce Éireann listening to us all is well gone. It's failure at planning level. It should be a national embarrassment in the waste of money. But of course, Simon is the man who launched the unfinished and $2 billion over budget National Children's Hospital. So says Councillor Shamie Morris to us this morning. All right, let me go back to the phones again, and this time to Edwina McElhenney from Families Unite for Services and Support. Good morning to you, Edwina.
Good morning, Fran. How are you?
I'm well, and good to talk to you again. I think you might have been listening to Simon Harris this morning. What did you make of what he was saying, Edwina?
Look, I'm so used to hearing the same lines being trotted out now. At this stage, you nearly kind of tune out, that kind of way. Like I don't know whether it's deliberate or otherwise, but they seem to be completely out of touch with the reality on the ground for a lot of people. You know, they talk about the squeezed middle or that, and carers, and you know, they say a lot of things, but I don't think it's they're not in touch with what's happening for people in the real world.
Yeah, what I put it to the Tánaiste about, you know, people making contact with those that are making the decision between heating and eating, and that, you know, some people are living in unfortunate circumstances. And his answer to me was interesting. He was basically saying there's no need for anybody to be in a position like that because there are services available. There is help. Would you accept that, Edwina?
I don't know whether I feel sorry for them that they actually believe that, you know, because it's not true. And I think that there's an illusion there. There's kind of an illusion there that, you know, there's enough support and there's enough, you know, social welfare payments, or, you know, that there's enough support there for people who are struggling. And that's really what it is, Fran, is that it's an illusion. Because time and time again, I hear it and you hear it on the radios and other radio stations where people are really, really struggling. And I mean, it's a choice. And I mean, I don't know whether it's the word choice that kind of, you know, adds to this kind of disillusionment that, you know, people are choosing between heating or eating. And I don't know, like, I don't think they get that. Do you know, I think that maybe, you know, is there some sort of a thinking that, you know, we're making it up, or, you know, we're kind of being overly dramatic or that, because I know people that is the reality for them. And maybe, as I said, it's not, I don't believe, choice might be the wrong word, but I think that, you know, it's their reality, you know, where they are struggling to feed themselves, and they're struggling to heat their homes.
Yeah, and I think the people who are outside of this as well, they might be sure about the fuel allowance and what it's actually worth. I mean, Joe Noble, a great friend of ours, was on to us to say you're talking about a bag of coal here, you know, so it's not as if it's a huge intervention in some way.
Yeah, you know, and look, well, you know, it's hard to, like, it's not, sometimes I think, you know, there's a lot of rhetoric, you know, where the government are doing nothing. And, you know, that's not true either. And I'd be the first to say it. It's not that they're not doing nothing. But the point is that what they're doing isn't working. You know, that kind of way. It was quite clear, I think, kind of from mutterings before there was ever any announcement last Tuesday that what was going to happen, that they were going to take 20 cents off the fuel, and, you know, they were going to extend the fuel allowance. But you know, not everyone is entitled to the fuel allowance. Not everyone that needs it is entitled to the fuel allowance. And what's there, it's a pittance. It is only your bag of coal. You've no way of starting a fire. You know, that kind of, how do you start it? Yeah, you could keep it going with a bag of coal, but how do you start it? Do you know, that kind of way? And I don't know whether people are just, I don't know. To be honest, I think that people are aware of what's going on, but, you know, everyone is just fighting their own battle at the moment. And it is, because no matter what wage you're on at the moment, you know, your expenses match your wage, if you get me. Do you know, that kind of way? No matter what money you're taking in, your expenses like, there's very few people who are flush with money at the moment. It's just, and even at that, they're afraid to spend money because we don't really know what's going to happen with the way the international scene is going on at the moment.
And when you and I first began to talk, Edwina, some years ago, I mean, things were pretty poor then, but they're so much worse now, aren't they?
Yeah, and, you know, I think that, like, you know, there's no recognition there that in government that what they're doing isn't working. You know, there's no recognition whatsoever, and it's like, we'll just keep trying, we'll just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And it's clearly not working for those who need it. You know, you know, that these targeted, like I'm going to say, for the, you know, the electricity credits that they get. Now, they gave that to everybody, you know, that they gave last year or whatever. Like, who needed that the most should have got the most, if you get me, Fran.
So it should be more targeted, Edwina, is that it?
Yes. Yeah, I believe it should have been more targeted, and they've just decided, like, they kind of made a hames of that, and just decided, like, we're not going to bother doing it at all this year. But I don't know. It seems to me that despite all our advocacy, despite people going on radio stations, despite them talking to their politicians, their councillors, former representatives, that no matter there is no recognition there that what they're doing isn't working, because it's very clearly not working. There are more and more people sinking into poverty every day. There are more and more people who are homeless every day. And it's just, I don't know, I just kind of, when I hear this rhetoric, and I mean, I'm not being funny, Fran, I know I'm political anyway, and I would be kind of, I would follow politics quite avidly. But I mean, all of this is like, it's scripted, that kind of way. And it's the same thing that's trotted out the whole time. We see that, of all that they're doing for people with disabilities and for children with disabilities, all the stuff that they're doing for us. But it's not making one jot of difference to the likes of ourselves, or for, people on pensions, or for those who are disabled or have disabled children. It's not making one iota of difference to it.
And, where mental health is concerned, I mean, you see the main story on the Times, say a quarter of children on CAMHS list waiting over 9 months at this point, so.
Yeah, CAMHS is.
Yeah.
CAMHS is the only health service. It's the only health service where you can refuse to see a child without actually seeing the child. You are referred in by a medical professional, usually your GP, and they are the only service that are allowed to refuse to see a child without actually seeing the child.
My God.
It's just, I mean, it'd be the very same as if you or I got a referral from our doctor to go for a consultant, for whatever kind of type of consultant. But for them to turn around and say to the GP, do you know what now? They don't actually need that, without ever seeing clapping eyes on you.
It's incredible. And just because it's mental health, yeah. It's just incredible. Leanne was telling me you have an interest in the Shannon pipeline as well, and you described that as a fiasco. What did you make of what he had to say about that?
I don't know. I genuinely hope that he's going to put a stop to it. As Minister for Finance, I would hope that he'll just put a stop to it, because it is a farce. It's a complete farce. It's just like we have whatever, they're just, it's like someone got a mad idea and, has been lobbied, to the death, and, they've just decided that this is a really good idea and have refused, put on blinkers and refused to look at any other viable option. And they're just going to plough it ahead with it because they see, euro signs in their eyes. Like, that's all that's wrong with them, is that they're just seeing, potential of up to 10 billion of taxpayer money, which, to be honest, Fran, we don't really have to waste, that kind of way. And it's just, I just think the whole thing is wrong. It's wrong from the very start. And when it's like anything in government, that when they come up with a really bad idea, they try and make it good instead of just scrapping it and just saying, this is a really bad idea. Look at what happened in Midwest Hospital, in UL. It was a really bad idea to close the hospitals and, have nowhere for patients to go. And instead of undoing that mistake, they continue to compound it for the guts of 16 years. So, we have Farm here, the Children's Hospital, another disaster. It's just, we don't seem to have, we've no control that once a project goes to tender, that seems to be the end of it. There's no financial controls outside of it, and it's the most vulnerable in society that end up paying the cost.
All right, Edwina, great to talk to you as always, and thanks for coming on with me. Thank you. Good morning to
Great.
you.
Thanks, Ben.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
It's Edwina McElhenney there from Families Unite for Services and Support. Let me just bring you a text that we had in, and it says, "Hey Fran, I'm an old age pensioner. I got a rent assessment form to fill in from the county council. My rent is going to go up. I'm very worried about this. I'm out of fuel. I have no heating on for the last few days in the house. Very cold. I had to watch TV last night with a hot water bottle and a blanket over me. The extra money I'm going to get from the fuel is going to the vet for treatment for my cat. I live on my own, and it's extremely hard to live with the cost of living going up. I wish I could work, but I'm not able anymore. There's something to be said for working, at least. I would be out of the house and wouldn't need heat until the evening time. The last the council sent me a rent assessment form was 2021. My social welfare has gone up since then, but the cost of living has gone through the roof, and I have a death insurance policy taken out, which I pay monthly, and a policy for the contents of my home. I have no choice now. I have to give them all up. I already had my security alarm on my phone taken out because I just can't afford to pay it. I feel very vulnerable living on my own with absolutely no security." That's it from one of our listeners today.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Welcome back to Tip Today, 1800 938 007. Now our sports editor Paul Carroll is with me to have a look back at the weekend of sport and maybe a little bit of a look forward as well. Good morning to you, Paul.
Morning, Fran. How are things?
Strange one at the top of the list, American football, Paul.
Yeah, not something we talk about all too often, but a fella from Cashel has really made international headlines over the course of the last week or so. ESPN, New York Times, The Athletic, articles everywhere. So Neff Jiwa, he's 20 years old, from Cashel, and he's signed with the University of South Carolina to play American football without ever playing the game before. So he played rugby underage with Cashel and with some Munster and Ireland underage teams. And he was spotted by a scout, an American football scout, who wanted to bring him over to do some drills and see what he could make of him. And that scout took a 3-second video of Neff doing some basic drills. Yeah, you
showed me that video on Friday.
A basic drill, 3-second video, and that kind of went viral between people in America with the big college football teams out there. So he got invited out to all these college football campuses and to check him out and maybe try and sign a deal. So he has signed a deal now, and I'm talking like the biggest names in college football. And you could be listening saying, well, why? Like, he hasn't played the game. What's so special about him? Well, he's 6'8". He's 21 stone, so 300 pounds if you're talking in American terms. And he's got like very long arms, so he'd be playing in a position now where you wouldn't be touching the ball at all. So if people are unaware of American football, the quarterback is the main fella, the guy who throws the ball. Well, he has 5 big lads in front of him protecting him and making sure no one injures the big money quarterback, and
Neff would be one of those
big lads up front protecting. So his job would be another 250, 300 pound lad is running at you, trying to get around you, and you have to stop them. So he has 36, I think, inch length arms. That means nothing to most people. I'm actually pretty much the same height as Neff, and my arms are 32 inches. So he has 4-inch arms longer than me. So you double that for your wingspan, and he's going to be a hard man to get around. So that's why all the American football coaches in America are very excited about this fella. So he signed. It's a big scholarship. There's money to be made in college football these days as well. So he could be looking at 6 figures off the bat, like, without ever playing the game at all. Like, so this is a huge deal, and there's a bit of hype around him as well because of those physicals. And like, when you hear 21 stone, you might think kind of overweight, but no, he's an athlete, like, and he runs fast, he moves fast, so that's why he's such an exciting prospect for American football. So
because when you hear 21 stone, you think of people like me and stuff, but he looks fantastic.
So he's a big athlete, and he can move, and they're big into their testing athletes over in America, so how quick you can run 40 yards how far you can jump standing still and jumping forward, broad jump, how far you can do that. And his testing in that is like really elite level. So it's just about whether he can learn the techniques and learn the game a bit better during his time in South Carolina. And you know, if this is a big if now, looking down the line, if he was to turn pro and go to the NFL, like lads in his position would be getting paid, you know, you're talking 10, 15 million a year, you know. Wow. So there's money to be made there. So very, very exciting for him.
Isn't it just indeed? To GAA then, Paul, and the league finals were on in Croke Park over the weekend. But some new rules have come under scrutiny. There's a bit of a row about that, isn't it?
The new rules that have come in have been widely greeted by Gaelic football supporters, and they've made the game certainly better. But the one rule that has caused a bit of an issue is the hooter system. So in Gaelic football now, you don't have a situation where someone is wasting time and the other team are shouting to the ref, you better add this on now at the end of the match, and then 70 minutes comes and you look at the fourth official and he lifts up a board that says 4 additional minutes will be added on. What happens now is if there's any stoppage, the ref stops the clock. So the idea is that when 70 minutes are up exactly, the hooter goes off and the game is over. But the problem is we saw it in the Division 2 final between Cork and Meath. Meath were 2 points up. There was a minute to go. Cork took a kick out. Meath just fouled your man straight away. That slowed down the clock, but the clock is still rolling. Then your man took the free. They fouled him again. And it just became terrible to watch because you were just looking at a situation where one team is completely running down the clock and Cork couldn't do anything about this. You know, they had to get back up after being fouled and take the free, and you know, it just made it look terrible. So the way it was last year was that when the hooter went off, it was the last play of the game, so the ball had to go dead. So that was a kind of fair way of doing it, because if you were fouling like that, it was no advantage to the team doing the fouling. You still had to defend for this last play. But now, you know, if you're up by 2 points and the clock is ticking down, 30 seconds to go, just literally hold on to your man, grab him, pull him to the ground or whatever, and let the clock run out and you win the game. And you know, the Meath lad got a black card for his foul, and he was like laughing, running off the field, because he knew he played the game and done his job. So that was a bit of a talking point. So it'll be interesting to see will they change that before the championship rolls around. And the other big talking point was Donegal's huge win over Kerry in the Division 1 final, and Michael Murphy getting away with an awful punch into the head on one of the Kerry lads right in front of the linesman. Not a good look, but he got away with it. But a lot of people upset about that. I
can imagine, indeed. Minor footballers, Munster Championship underway yesterday.
Yeah, unfortunately they were beaten by Limerick. It was on over in Latin. 1-9 to 1-4 was the full-time score to Limerick. So Limerick winning that game by 5 points. Really difficult conditions yesterday while that game was going on. It looked like a very kind of sloppy kind of conditions underfoot. Nothing to do with the pitch now or anything, but just the weather at the time of the game. And Killian Morrissey performed well for Tipperary. He scored 1-2. So a defeat for Tipperary in the first round, but they're away to Waterford next Monday evening, and that would be a very important game for them.
Ladies footballers?
Yeah, they rounded off their league. They were beaten by Tyrone in Clonmel in Clonmel Sportsfield yesterday, 5-10 to 5-5. So a much more entertaining game, I suppose, than their game against Donegal, which finished 7 points to 6. So certainly a more entertaining game of football yesterday in Clonmel. Unfortunately, Tipperary on the wrong side of it, but not without some good stories. Sixth-year student in St. Anne's in Tipperary Town, Lily Maher, scored a goal in the game for Tipperary, the first goal of the game for Tipp. So a prospect there for Tipperary ladies football. Anna Rose Kendi, Niamh Martin, Clara English and Anna Carey got the other goals, but Tipp were up at half time, but Tyrone scored 3 goals in a 5-minute period between the 40 and 45th minute, and that kind of swung the game in their favour. So Tipp finished the league 5th in Division 2, 3 wins, 3 losses and 1 draw, so very much middle of the pack. A couple of results could have went their way, but overall you'd kind of take that for first year under a new manager, and you know, again without some key players, the likes of Ashley Maloney down in Australia at the minute. So a pretty decent league, I'd say, for Tipperary, and they build towards the championship now.
The Tipp minor and under-23 Camogie teams were in action as well.
Yeah, the minors were beaten by Galway 2-16 to 1-11, but they're both already through to the semi-final, so you'd wonder about kind of team lineups and motivations for both teams. So Tipp are already into All-Ireland minor Camogie semi-final, and they'll actually play Galway in that semi-final. I'm not sure exactly when that game will be taking place. The under-23s, who were Munster champions last weekend, they had a quick turnaround to the start of the All-Ireland Championship. This is a group stage with 5 or 6 games to play, and they were away to Dublin, and it finished up a draw. Tipperary won 9, Dublin 12 points. So they'll be back out in action in the coming weeks as that championship continues.
Let's go to rugby then, and once again, Munster beaten in South Africa.
Yeah, but much improved, I think. They were beaten 45-0 last week by the Sharks, but on Saturday it was 34 points to 31 against the Bulls. So 2 bonus points secured, so they don't leave South Africa with nothing, and they are important points because Munster are now up to 7th in the URC with 4 games to go, but still lingering around. You have to be top 8 to get a place in the European Cup next year, the Champions Cup, and that is very important for revenue. And Munster are under a lot of pressure at the minute. A lot of negative stories coming out about money in Munster rugby and things like that. So getting to the Champions Cup is very, very important for Munster. So a disappointing defeat, but the performance seemed to be an awful lot better, and they come away with 2 points. And they have a big game now on Saturday in the Challenge Cup, so the kind of second tier of European Cup rugby. They're away to Exeter at 12:30 on Saturday, so that's a big game as well coming up.
And to local rugby over the weekend then, Paul?
Yeah, it was kind of hopeful around Nina over the weekend that maybe Nina Ormond could get their first win in Division 1A. They're relegated now. They're 10th place out of 10 teams in Division 1A, the top tier club rugby. But they were at home to the team in second last place, UCD. So the second last game of the season, this was kind of built as maybe the chance to get that win in Division 1A. And Nina Ormond 49, UCD 57. So seemed like an absolute crazy game. But unfortunately, Nina Ormond on the losing side of it there, with UCD taking the spoils. Elsewhere across the divisions, Division 2A, Cashel had a big win, 47 points to 13 away to Old Crescent, and that's a win that secures Cashel their place in Division 2A, which is very, very important. And they're just 6 points outside the promotion playoffs with 1 game to go. So unfortunately, they won't be able to get to the promotion playoffs. But very important for them to secure their place in Division 2A. And Clonmel were beaten over the weekend, but it wasn't too much of a punishing defeat. They were beaten 21-33 away to Dolphin. Clonmel are top of Division 2C, but second place Bective Rangers also lost, so that let Clonmel off the hook. So Clonmel are top of the table by 2 points, and their final game of the season is against Ballyclare next Saturday. So if they could win that, they'd be Division 2C champions.
What about soccer then?
Yeah, local soccer, Fran. The FAI Junior Cup was the main focus over the weekend. St Michael's 1-0 winners over Kerr Park. BT Harps of North Tipperary bet Oldbridge 3-0. We had other kind of results all around. Clonmel Town 7, Duallan 0. There was a lot of results there. Peak Villa's game against SC&K United. SC&K couldn't field a team, so that game was called off. And other results, Clonmel Celtic 1, Rare Cross 0. Among the other results there, Ballamackie 8, Tipperary Town 2. And Cashel Town 1-0 winners away to Dino Hill. Cullen 5, Ardcroney 3. So those are the results there in the FAI Junior Cup, as it's still very early stages of that competition. And just a quick mention as well, Fran, a Clonmel boxer, Conor O'Donovan, made his pro debut over in Boston over the weekend, and he had a KO debut win over John Medina. So that was a big win for him and all at Clonmel Boxing Club.
Fair play. Will you have a look forward for me then, Paul? What's coming up this week?
Tomorrow, Fran, is maybe the most, I don't know what to call it, depressing game, humiliation, ritual. I don't know what to kind of label this game, but Ireland are playing North Macedonia in a friendly on Tuesday evening at 7:45, and a game we all hope to be a World Cup playoff final in Dublin. Instead, it's a meaningless.
But it means absolutely nothing, does it?
Yeah, or less, even if it can mean less than nothing. Yeah. So it's really hard. Like North Macedonia were in the other playoff semi-final against Denmark, and they were beaten 4-0. So said last thing those lads want to do is trounce over to Dublin to play a meaningless friendly, but that's what it is. So unfortunately, we're not looking forward to a World Cup playoff final.
And because we, a little bit of time has sort of elapsed since that awful night in Czechia. Any thoughts on it at this point? I mean, what is the manager saying about going forward now?
Yeah, like I know a lot of the reaction after the game was kind of like, oh, brave defeat and whatever, but on the cold hard day of it, they were 2-0 up, and they gave away the most silliest penalty you're ever going to see to kind of hand Czechia away back into the game, and it's really disappointing, and losing out in penalties, and it's always difficult, lads missing penalties, and you'd always say fair play to standing up and hitting a penalty, because that's always difficult. But I'm still sickened after it anyway.
Yeah.
You kind of think of what could have been. Imagine if we were going into this game tomorrow against Denmark, home playoff. Imagine if you got into the World Cup, the fever and that would just build over the next few months, but not to be, Fran.
Anyway, what else is happening? Some more positive stuff
to take our mind off all that. The Tipp under-20s hurlers are back in action on Wednesday. That's a game you can hear live on Tipp FM against Waterford. They beat Cork last time out, so looking to make it 2 wins from 2 down in Fraher Field Wednesday evening, 7 o'clock throw-in time. The minor hurlers get their Munster Championship underway against Clare on Friday evening in Semple Stadium, and at the same time the under-20 footballers are away to Waterford in Leamy Bryan on Friday evening. And also the Munster, I said, next Saturday, 12:30, big game for them. And the AIL rounds up next weekend as well, among other things happening. But those are the main things to look forward to this week.
All right. Thanks very much indeed for that, Paul.
Thanks,
Thank
Fran.
you. And good morning to you. That's our sports editor, Paul Carroll. 1800 938 007. And we're still getting lots in from our listeners. One listener is saying, could any member of the government live on the old age pension? Why don't they try? I would doubt it, to be honest with you. I would doubt it. Somebody else saying, carers living in the same house as a person who is on a benefit payment doesn't get a fuel allowance. So not all carers get the fuel allowance. That needs to change. Carers bring people to appointments and carers have to pay for fuel to do so. Says one of our listeners. And okay, anybody with a brain cell. It's always interesting when a message starts with that. Anybody with a brain cell knows that what's going on in Trump world. He's MAGA, which is exactly what all leaders should be doing for their nation. So that's making reference, I suppose, to the MAGA thing, which is Make America Great Again. This is obviously somebody who's a Donald Trump supporter. There you go, and you're perfectly entitled to be, indeed. And more coming in from pensioners out there who are finding it extremely difficult to make ends meet. And to sum it all up, they weren't too impressed with what they heard from the Tánaiste this morning. That's it for me. Leanne produced, and we'll be back with you tomorrow. Stephen's on the way with the time tunnel on the lunchtime show. Look after yourselves, won't you? Bye-bye.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.